Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, September 1st, which is literally just a countdown at this point as far as for me needing to get footage scheduled and not getting around to it. Yeah, let's see. So, for the accountability section, there's not really a lot to say. I'm still playing Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I yesterday had a pretty bad day. It's just made about three-hour episodes, which the Isaac episodes are super long, and none of them went really far. Apparently, Rage of Baphomet 10th anniversary. Wow, has Shadowverse really been out over 10 years? That is a long time. You usually don't even see that in collectible card games where they go back and say, hey, yeah, this game has anniversaries and old content is out. Let's see. Tie-in event would launch browser windows, so we'll not worry about that. But, yeah. Rage of Baphomet, I don't think actually is Shadowverse, though, come to think of it. Now that I think about it a little bit more, Rage of Baphomet is a different game that they crossed over. And yeah, let's see, if we go way down here, you have Rise of Bahamut, not Rage of Baphomet. Could have been Rage of Bahamut. I could, regardless. Let's not do private matches for sure. So, what will we be playing? Dragoncraft or Bloodcraft? Well, I guess that gives us an excuse to try some Dragoncraft stuff. Yeah, so I'm playing Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and we're getting very close to the end at this point. I think I'll probably do one run, just one last run, trying on hard. Maybe not actually one last run, but trying to get the completion mark on hard to Mom's Heart is all you really have to do in Rebirth. It's not until you get the Afterbirth DLC that you have more unlocks for doing more things on hard, and most of the things you get for doing things on hard are just different versions of co-op babies, which the split screen co-op is not a mode I would even use, so there's like no thought there. And as far as what needs to happen, there is like one boss rush I'd like to do, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to find a way to do boss rush. It feels like you kind of have to play as Isaac and just run, not pick up coins, not do anything, get through the rooms very easily, very quickly, and get very lucky. You probably just need to have the Bible. It would be certainly different if you did the boss rush once and beat Mom's Foot in less than 20 minutes. And then it just always unlocked the boss rush. But it doesn't. You have to constantly do it over and over again. And so you have to be in that, like, I probably am somewhere in the top 20% of Isaac players, but you probably have to be in the top 10%, top 5%, maybe even top 1% to just consistently play as the Lost or consistently get boss rush. There is definitely a problem with the Binding of Isaac in its, I hate to use the word accessibility, but yeah, its difficulty. I'm not one of those people that wants to make an argument that all games should be beatable by all players, but I think all games should be beatable by most players. And what is beatable in the Binding of Isaac is a little weird because, yeah, most players probably could beat Mom's Foot, which for the first 5 or 10 times, that's all you can do, and that's as far as you can go. But most players can't get consistently to Mega Satan, or do the boss rush, or do Hush in the Repentance DLC, or unlock the Lost and then get the Lost all the way to Hush. Those are super difficult challenges, and it isn't just a matter of, should I even bother to play ranked? I guess we'll try it a little bit. Then we were going to play Dragoncraft, which that would be this guy. And I don't even have another Dragoncraft deck. So let's see. Where could we? Arena, cards, decks, tournament winning decks, Dragoncraft. Let's see, how many missing cards are we? We can't do that one. Can't do that one. Can't do that one. Can't do that one. Yeah. Can't do that one, but it's getting cheaper. Can't do that one. Yeah. I guess we could go back to other seasons and try and play previous seasons, but that doesn't, I think, really work either. See, so yeah, this tournament winning deck system to suggest you cards only makes sense if you have a lot of vials, which would only make a lot of sense if I was not trying to craft one of each cards. I definitely am playing Shadowverse slightly differently than I think they intend, by trying to just have pretty, like, be a Pokemon gotta get them all type player just to look at the art on the cards, which digital card games could accommodate that easier, certainly, by just letting you look at the cards even if you don't collect them. But then that focuses all of your player base to actually just playing the game, which maybe that's exactly what you'd want. Yeah. Yeah, but back to Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I probably am gonna just struggle a little bit with beating certain bosses. It would be ideally nice to get every single character all the way to the dark place and all the way to the chest and beat the blue baby and beat the lamb for each character. But some of that is literally just going to come down to how much time I want to put into it and how much effort I want to put into it. And what I've been saying is, really with Rebirth, if you get 80% unlocks, 80% of the secrets, 80% of everything done, and then you got the Afterbirth DLC, well, then it would add so much new content that you could then get that most of that remaining 20% unlocked while playing new games and seeing a lot more. And it kind of continuously goes down that way. So you kind of would then want to get, like, Rebirth, you'd be 80% complete. You add Afterbirth, then you're probably down to something around 50, maybe even 40% complete. Then you play for another 30 to 60 hours in Afterbirth and get about 80% complete there as far as the new maximum number. And then you add Afterbirth Plus, and that probably jumps you down to 40-50%. And then you just keep doing that, and You get Afterbirth Plus to about 80% complete, and then you go to Repentance. Repentance changes the game quite a bit. There's so much variety, so many items, so many different synergies, particularly in the Repentance DLC, that it probably makes it super easy to fulfill almost everything you've missed at that point. The donation machine in particular is a great example of that. I have the donation machine up to like 600 coins. It would be a fairly large struggle to it would be a fairly large struggle to try and get see. Alright, let's go ahead and just... I guess you want to evolve this?
Be gone. Awaken, for the end is near.
And then you do this.
I do believe we have a case.
And then you do this.
Suspicious.
That.
You wouldn't.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, but I think I'm getting close to being done with Isaac. The rubber finally fell off of my controller, so I've ordered a new controller, but I got one slightly cheaper, so it's going to take like 2 weeks to arrive. The good news is, though, just playing on the bare plastic is not that bad. It's a little slick, and I could see easily get really greasy if you're not careful. But it's not immediately causing blisters. Let's see.
I suppose I've lost some of
Which that was my main concern, was that it was just going to immediately blister my thumb like crazy. And yeah, I have failed horribly to actually schedule any videos, and I need to do that. I'm still drinking a ton of water also. Isaac in particular just encourages it because there's a break between each floor. There is a real question on what a Binding of Isaac 2 could be if you were ever going to make something like that. Like the laser eyeballs, which I think eventually just get kind of removed or severely reduced in how often they show up. Like you would expect them to be like the eyeballs in Mario 64, where you could run around in circles and kill them. But they aren't. And storyline wise, I think you probably would have to have Isaac as either an older child or as an adult, going as an assistive character into the mind, into the imagination of another kid, whether it's his child or a friend. And it would have to be the mind of another kid that imagines something that is just a completely different type of dogma than Christian dogma, I think. Because they've just played out that trope, which is the more recognizable in the West trope. Whereas I think you go with maybe a Indian Naraka dogma, or you go with Shintoism or Buddhism, or you go into something kind of crazy. Alright, well, I guess you just kill this.
It's justice.
And did that.
Time to say goodbye.
And go ahead and follow that. And hit that. So if he can clear the field, and before I can find one way to do 1 damage or heal himself a lot, I could still lose here. But I also would say there is a large argument to just not doing a Isaac 2. I think that they need to do something different by a different name, different gameplay style. In a lot of ways, I think Hades is very similar to what a Binding of Isaac 2 could have been. Let's see, I guess I keep playing? Yeah. I'm noticing there's a poll on the chat button now. Is that new, or did I just not see it? Create a poll. I can add a yes and a no, and then I can add a 35 character thing. So if I was going to do this, there you go. So created a poll, and I don't see it in the chat. There it is. It took forever to show up. So now there's just like this running, maybe wasting bandwidth poll in the chat for do you play Shadowverse? Interesting. And then I guess you click on it. I could certainly see some usefulness in that. I don't, particularly if you're like a Twitch streamer, and you're like putting up a list of games that you're considering playing next and you want to switch games, that could be something. Or if you're just actually trying to get some feedback. I can see a lot of stupid uses for it and abuse of it too, where you're just trying to get engagement out of for no reason. Yeah.
Let us play together.
So I guess today we need to just burn through the news as usual. If we could get back to some more follow list cleanup, that would be great. But yeah, otherwise we just need to clean up all the news and all the games that have come out so that we don't have a ton on Friday, even though we'll leave some over the weekend over Friday.
Do not seek what is not
Right,
there.
let's see. Child's Play Charity retweeted a job listing here. I believe it was Child's Play Charity. They're looking for a project coordinator. The Indiana University Health is looking for a project coordinator at Riley Hospital in Indianapolis, Indiana. I feel like you probably require some form of degree in child education. Let's see. Yeah, bachelor's degree in a related field or equivalent years of experience required. Clinical license or other certificates may be required per unit department specialty. That's probably a generic thing. 0 to 3 years experience is required. Experience with matrix organization and complex work environments a plus, which is to say that almost every hospital is, instead of a top-down structure of who's the boss and who's the employee, it is a horrific mess of different people being in charge of different things. At a certain point, hospitals could almost be a flat structure or very close to flat structure where you have everybody on the same level, but
Let the clouds roll in.
there's just a lot of ego. Certainly, doctors are not going to be happy if even a head nurse was considered the same level as they are, and a senior doctor is not going to be happy if he's on the same level as a intern doctor or like just first year.
I suppose I've lost some of my edge.
Let's see what else. You need experience exhibiting professional judgment and diplomacy in handling unexpected problems and frequent interruptions, which that's a generic thing that probably should be in every job, but in particular in the hospital, that makes sense. And basic proficiency in Microsoft Office, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. I don't get why so many job listings in particular want PowerPoint. It seems so stupid. Like, if anybody has a job where they are making PowerPoint presentations, your job obviously is too easy. Like, and most people don't need to know how to use Excel, even at a basic proficiency level, really, because that Excel's like for accounting and database stuff at most. Like, that's not really what needs to happen. On the other hand, I was just thinking earlier today how much of my early college experience was literally them just trying to teach you the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic all over again. And I was like, found that incredibly infuriating that I was taking a degree plan for computer programming and they're still requiring that you take Algebra 1. And I imagine people with art degrees probably found that really annoying also. Those core classes may not really be relevant to specific people's specialty. And there would have to have been an assumption if you passed the ACT or SAT to get into a college that you already had the basic high school level of education there. So that they really are just screwing people over and making them pay for more classes. Regardless, this job listing doesn't seem crazy. I think people, if you could do this, I'm a little surprised that that there isn't kind of a better description here as far as what it is. Let's see. He'll be responsible for supporting current technologies and developing new technologies with the Child Life Department to support the psychological and emotional needs of children receiving medical treatment at the Riley Hospital and their families, provides project management support to leads and team members, assists with and supports team planning, execution, monitoring, progress, delivering end results, collaborates across teams to ensure alignment, assesses situations, gathers appropriate information and input, makes recommendations to leaders. This is really mostly hogwash. It's just gibberish. Yeah, well, it's not gibberish, but it's extremely generic, written by some HR person who has no idea what the position actually does. Ensures quality customer service and professional representation of the team and the department. So, at a certain point, I don't even know. I guess if you're project coordinator, you're probably the boss there, helping other people mostly set up Xboxes, PlayStations, and DVD players. That's, I think, all you really would want to do there. You're probably not going to hand Steam Decks when they come out to children, or you're probably not even going to hand them Switches. There is specialty video game consoles that have been designed to not be ruined by just multiple cleanings per day with either bleach or some other cleaning solution, which you kind of need that. Otherwise, you run into problems, certainly. But that's kind of all you would really need to do. I bet PC gaming in particular is a non-existent thing in hospitals. And I doubt you're doing too much with like accessibility. I doubt you're going to have a collection of accessibility controllers or specialized controllers that you're giving to people who have ambulatory special needs, or sighted or unsighted adjustments or hearing adjustments. Potentially working in a hospital like that and saying, hey, our job is to keep these kids sane, and they all have very unique, off the average physical limitations, or a lot of them do, is an exciting concept as far as like a DevOps. Can we develop something here that really helps this kid play games, and you would never really want to have to give up and say, no, this person is blind, deaf, and dumb. There's no way we can pinball wizard this game for him. Yep. Those 1-up arcades, I think they're called the 1-up arcades, the little mini arcades at 80%. Having like one of those, if you had extra budget and were just trying to waste it, in every waiting room would probably be a great idea. Like almost every waiting room has a TV, at least one TV, for that very reason, that they don't want people and their children sitting in waiting rooms going insane with boredom. So you put up a TV with distractions, and then unfortunately in many cases then they cheat and put advertisements and commercials on the TV, or educational stuff on the TV, which then kind of kills the point of it trying to actually distract somebody if it's just a whole bunch of commercials for medicines, which I wouldn't be surprised if certain pharmacies are paying for those TVs too, and then requiring commercials to run. But yeah, that's an interesting job listing, certainly. And I still do want to cover slightly video game related job listings. Probably not to the extent that I just talked about that one. I would think project coordinator is a fairly high position. You probably want to have been a project coordinator before, unless you feel you can really just step it up. And then you always have the standard things of working with a team, particularly a team of IT people, where you can either have the right IT people or you can have the wrong IT people, and working with them can be a nightmare or it can be a dream. I've definitely run into a lot of wrong IT people and a few right ones. But yeah, people that have no business being in IT because they're not technology minded, not intelligent, not just generically lazy. A lot of them have had just general personality flaws that really, in my book, should have eliminated them from being hired from most jobs, not just IT jobs. Not that I'm expecting perfection from IT people. I'm just expecting people to not insult people to their face. Moving on, we have a game called Cookie Clicker on Steam, which, if this was the official Cookie Clicker, which it says, it is the official version for Steam, although it was originally released in 2013 on the web. It's kind of late to the party to be playing Cookie Clicker at this point. Has anything really been changed or improved since 2013? 500 achievements plus 600 upgrades. And they're trying to put in like mods. Yeah, having Cookie Clicker be online on the web is kind of ridiculous. So I'm gonna believe this really is Cookie Clicker. I can't really tell you if it was. It looks very different to me because I thought Cookie Clicker was mostly a mobile game and it was just this screen over here, but maybe when they ported it over or they added widescreen modifications, that would certainly make sense.
Is that a human?
But yeah, I don't know if there's much I could do as far as showing off a clicker game. It would probably be a ridiculous amount of time wasted. Someone on my Twitter feed mentioned this game Shindig, which, yeah, it just looks like a game. I don't know if I see anything here that catches my attention. No. If anything, it just kind of seems like a generic, uninteresting game. And that's probably me being a little too nice. Generally, I think I'd probably call it just a joke game.
The uncharted desert awaits. Get back here. Get back here. It's time to retreat.
Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Bethesda has been forced to clarify that Starfield is still not coming to the PS5. Apparently, they had appeared to hint that a future PlayStation releases in an earlier live stream. I think really that really highlights an example of where you have to go over every single word with a fine-tooth comb because somebody else is going to go over every single word with a fine-tooth comb. When you make these presentations, the bigger issue I think is I don't know if I really believe Starfield is ever actually coming out. And what Starfield kind of needs to be as the third leg of this table that they're trying to build a three-legged table with, and I think that probably is an apt comparison, is it needs to be a modern engine running something like Skyrim at the next generation, which really, frankly, means 2 or 3 generations above what Skyrim was, because it's been just so incredibly long. If if Starfield came out and it's just Skyrim, it's the same bugginess that we've seen from Bethesda in the past. If it's basically the same engine, if Skyrim mods just easily copy and paste over to Starfield mods, that's like not good enough. It needs to be a massive massive thing. Like, this would be the first universe in 25 years, the article goes to point out. So yeah, they really have to hit it out of the park, and it is a Duke Nukem Forever situation. The longer they wait, the expectation is just going to go higher and higher.
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw.
Just go ahead and kill this. Then end the turn. Now, I don't know what you really do in space as a Elder Scrolls Fallout type game that's different. You're basically leaning heavier, much more on the writing and style of Fallout without any of the Fallout nuclear war style and feel to it. So is Starfield going to be super serious, or is it going to try and play as more of a Star Wars or Star Trek type universe? Is it going to be silly? Do this.
My dragon and I are one.
And then this. Then this.
Find tomorrow's water pressure.
And then
Be gone.
do this, I guess.
Oh, this thing's more vicious than a nine. This is
And then
pure
hit that.
craftsmanship.
Like, Elder Scrolls needs a new game desperately. Fallout 4 was a new game, and Fallout 76 were new games, but they didn't really work that well. Honestly,
What a drag.
I would think it would have been much better for them to announce another Elder Scrolls game at this point, and announce the beginning of development of another Fallout game than to continue to try and push
On to the
Starfield.
next project.
You almost need Starfield to go in a completely different genre, because Fallout is an RPG adventure game. Skyrim, Elder Scrolls games are RPG adventure games. That seems to be more the problem than anything. They need Starfield to be potentially a high action game with no RPG, just a linear storytelling experience. And that'd be weird from Bethesda, but it would probably be the right way to go.
Zing! A crack-a-boom! From now on, the shiniest shiny!
Okay, what do we want to do?
It won't be long now.
I guess we kill one guy.
I'll add this to my shiny, so that's how you use it.
But yeah, looking at that
Foul
trailer,
forces of darkness, bow
in a lot of ways, I guess what Bethesda could really do is get rid of the Bethesda part, or get rid of Todd Howard. Like, and that would be, I guess, the ultimate shift that would be very weird, but also would be very interesting to see that Todd Howard just announces his retirement. But even if he announced his retirement, there'd almost be this assumption that he would go on to work at some other company or form his own company. So I imagine Microsoft will just either promote him out of Bethesda or or keep him where he is and give him very little screen time and face time with the cameras. It would be interesting, certainly, if you got like the Tim Sweeney and Todd Howard together in some of the other Microsoft companies, and you just got all those slightly problematic, highly ambitious people to work together on some kind of dream project that would, would never go anywhere. But then that gets them out of being in charge of Bethesda and ZeniMax and Double Fine. Let's see. Hit this. Could only do this or this. So let's do this. And then do this.
Nothing personal. It's justice. I'm all out of shoes. Wouldn't. Don't take
And
this.
do that. Video Games Chronicle says, what WB Games will show Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad at the DC October Fandom. Yeah. I was starting to really wonder if Gotham Knights was actually going to come out. This is the Arkham Asylum replacement that isn't supposedly going to have Batman in it. And then Rocksteady's Suicide Squad, I haven't heard anything about at all. Yep. See, and I think in Gotham Knights it is like Robin, Red Robin, Oracle, Batgirl, yeah, Batgirl, Robin, maybe Red Hood or Red Mask, and one of them. And the problem I still would be worried about as far as Gotham Knights is this really just going to pop down into being very similar to Arkham City, which I just played, in which you're still using the Mortal Kombat fight mechanics to do this action beat 'em up experience? And I suspect from what I'm seeing here that is exactly what this is. Although this guy has guns, but I imagine his bullets are going to be not actual bullets and more like taser bullets and not that strong. Like, it would be, unless you're going to get AI playing with you, I think in most cases you're just going to pick a character and play as them for the entire run of the game. Or, unless this is like a Borderlands type thing where you have to have 4 people on screen at all time. I wonder how much of this is actually even going to be story based or have any puzzles or collectibles. They may very well just be getting rid of the collectibles. The idea of it taking 4...
One day we'll reach our goal.
There. I lost there. But I think... yeah, had I been moved a little faster. Yeah, the idea that it would take 4 of them to replace one Batman really just shows the problem with Batman. And this teaser here is showing the owls, so the Court of Owls, which I wouldn't be surprised if that is exactly how they're going to bring Bruce Wayne back at the end of the story, or halfway through the story, where you're just playing as Batman after about halfway. I think you have probably even more of a problem, and there isn't even a trailer here, as far as yeah, it's Nightwing, Robin, Red Hood, and Batgirl, following the death of Bruce Wayne, which I assume he's just going to be Lazarus pitted or brought back via the process of the owls. I don't think you would have to have a series where you're just giving all 4 of those characters a game for multiple games. So Gotham Knights 1, 2, and 3. And I have no idea what you do with Suicide Squad. Like, it'd almost have to be like a Telltale game where the character you play as in one chapter changes from chapter to chapter. Yeah. They are trying very hard. WB, in the middle of being acquired and merged, he's trying very hard to make Suicide Squad something that is really popular, and they're not really going to accomplish that. They can go a little bit in that direction. Certainly, I think Suicide Squad now, after 3 movies, is more known by the general populace than it was before, but it almost feels like what's going to happen is Suicide Squad is just going to end up being a buffer between the last Justice League movies and the next reboot of Justice League movies. I wouldn't be surprised if we literally, after the most recent 3rd Suicide Squad movie, we slowly get continued Suicide Squad movies, maybe, but we also start to see more Batman movies, which we know are in development, and more Superman movies, and they just go back to their standard concept of having something always coming out under the name of Batman or under the name of Superman. Yeah. Moving on, we are not moving fast through the news. Apparently Game Boy and Game Boy Color games are coming to the Switch Online really soon, which I guess that's fine, but I mean, it's just going to be emulation, and there was a massive amount of Game Boy games that came out that were licensed, but Nintendo will only really bring out first-party titles and a few select licensed games. So you're expecting maybe Tetris for the Game Boy and some other Nintendo things. I doubt that they're going to try and come out with a limited edition Game Boy Mini, which they have not done anything to support the NES Mini or anything like that. Which would have been nice if they had gone in that direction and given you some more updates or even a refreshed version of the NES Mini with different games. But clearly they didn't want to really support that. But they also didn't really support the Nintendo Online games that they release, and their Nintendo service makes very little sense. Yeah, it probably would have been a nightmare right about now to try and get an NES Mini if they were still making them, just because of the part shortage, but maybe not that much of a problem because there's really not a lot of demand happening either.
Freshness guaranteed. Freshness guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't want to evolve this just to do this. Video Games Chronicle has an article here. The Dead Space reboot will introduce a new dynamic flesh peeling system, apparently. I mean, technology-wise, that they had this little live stream. That sounds interesting. And this is just going to be a lot of face chat. But I don't think that does anything. I think you're just taking something that was on a regular scale, as far as you could rip off the limbs of people or shoot off the limbs, to a microscopic scale, which will just have the zombies look more unique as they're taking damage, but you won't really notice much of a difference. Probably you'll have a performance waste, whether or not that actually slows the number of frames because of that. But yeah, I imagine visually you are not going to notice much of a difference on that, just because of the fact that you'll be shooting a game. You'll be shooting guns at that point, and when you're shooting the guns, you won't have time to notice that the flesh is dynamically ripping and tear. In a lot of ways, a dynamic flesh system isn't too far away from the cloth physics that NVIDIA has put into their systems, and I think DirectX has put into their systems. We have definitely seen in other games where you shoot holes in a flag or a piece of cloth and it just starts to tear very dynamically. And really, unlike ray tracing, where I think that actually does have kind of a massive appreciable improvement, the cloth tracing effects are just extra, to the point where when it originally came out with NVIDIA drivers, you often would just turn it off completely, and there would be one version of people playing the game where they saw no cloths at all. It just did not spawn in at all. And then there would be another version where people saw cloths and they would dynamically flap in the breeze and tear. It more than likely, I would say, without sitting through this 42-minute Talking Heads developer presentation, really feels like this is just another example of them saying it's going to have a feature and committing to that one feature, and then talking about it to steal more thunder and oxygen out of the room, as far as the Callisto Protocol, which is really, and I'm going to have to say this every single time, really the game you should be more hyped about and more excited about, it would be the Callisto Protocol, which can take the story in a different direction and do something different, whereas Dead Space is going to be hamstrung with being a reboot of an already existing series, and thus you kind of expect it to go in certain directions. If they made a Dead Space and you're not playing as Isaac, you're not fighting Necromorphs, there is no Unitologist cult, there isn't a mining corporation, there isn't Nishimura. At a certain point, you're not really playing the Dead Space then. If there's no horror in the game, and it is just an action game, then you're really not playing Dead Space at that point. And that same concept, I think, also applies to the reboot of Saints Row. And as that's continued to be talked about, and I thought about it a little bit more, there really is an argument here that they shouldn't have named this new game Saints Row. At the very least, don't call it Saints Row, call it The Row, or The Saints. Just slightly inspired by it. Because the kind of game you're going to have to make in modern time and the kind of game they're going to want to make in modern time compared to Saints Row is just going to be completely different. It's going to feel completely different. So leaning on that name does not work. The same is true for Duke Nukem. Like, if you made a game that played a lot like Duke Nukem, but you didn't name the character Duke Nukem, you'd have a completely different series and completely different expectations. You would generally just have a generic first-person shooter game, which, while that's not the most interesting or unique type of game, it still sells and it still works. I think Bulletstorm is a great example of that, where Bulletstorm really is just kind of Duke Nukem without calling Duke Nukem, and it was able to go into a slightly different direction, actually more extreme than the Duke Nukems that would have been out when Bulletstorm originally came out. But yeah, nowadays I think you'd go a little less extreme. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says filming of the Last of Us TV series pilot episode appears to have wrapped. I don't know if this really is video game news, but whatever. I'll mention it. Windows 11 launches for free in October, and it's promising the best Windows ever for gaming. I wouldn't suggest people jumping up to anything. Let's see. Apparently it's going to come out with a DirectX 12 Ultimate, which I don't know why you wouldn't just call it DirectX 13, other than, I guess, the fear of the number 13. So they painted themselves in a corner there. I guess maybe what they'll do is just jump over to DirectX 14. And then it says it's going to have direct storage, which I would assume is just faster gaming optimized access to hard drives and SSDs, and then auto high dynamic range, which is nice. The most interesting thing I've seen as far as market Windows 11 is just the fact that you're going to be able to have more options as far as where you drag the windows and have multiple windows on multiple screens. Because my only solution at this point has always been to just buy more monitors, and honestly I don't want to have to put in a fourth monitor, which would kind of make sense though to do on my setup, to just to have Windows stay where they're supposed to stay and be where they're supposed to be. Let's see, I guess you do this and this. Can we do anything to save ourselves?
Hunger is sharper than any freshness guaranteed. What was sown has been reaped.
Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't feel like Windows 11 is really going to do anything really crazy, and it feels like they now are stupidly painted into this corner where they have to backtrack on the idea of Windows 10 just going forever, which, if anything, it's probably putting a nail in the coffin on the idea of a Windows as a service or software as a service in general. Yeah. There are softwares out there that do work as services, but
Magic is a salve.
Don't forget to sell some merch.
that's usually more professional level softwares. They can get away with that. Photoshop as a service gets away with that. Windows has to appeal to a much broader audience, and most people don't want to buy they want to actually think they own things instead of having things constantly change and update. I guess Windows 10 could have simply said their virus scanning and support for security things could be forever, but even that is kind of ridiculous. Moving on, a modder has added a Mario Kart tracks to the Microsoft Flight Simulator, which I'm sure this will get DMCA'd. Mario Kart 8 tracks, which, yeah, I assume what that really boils down to is a situation where they've mostly recreated it, or they've been able to decompile the Mario Kart game and put this. It would, I assume, also only be the flying tracks. You know what this does prove, though, is the idea that maybe Microsoft Flight Simulator could be a little bit more interesting of a game if you had some things like this just by default and not modded, had some racing tracks. But the thing here is, in this single propeller plane, you're not getting the speed boosts, and there doesn't look to be any kind of items or anything. So this is an example of what it would feel like if you were actually flying a real plane through a Mario Kart track, which is to say it's gonna be kind of boring. Yep. And you can see on the ground here that there are jumps and platforms that I suppose the idea would have been that if you could get on the ground, that would work. But there's no land goals, or no land vehicles. So yeah, let's see. That is a great example of somebody doing something to show that it can be done, more than somebody doing something and coming out with a final product that actually makes sense and would interest the average player. I would in no way suggest people play Flight Simulator if they're a Mario Kart fan and thinking they're going to get anywhere close to same support. Video Game Chronicles said PlayStation Network Online services for PS5 and PS4 were down.
This one's for my family.
Servers are reportedly coming back online now. It's been updated to. This is the first time we've had any notification of servers being down in several weeks, if not months. And yeah, it once again was PlayStation, which again is just a black spot on PlayStation's reliability record. Microsoft servers seem to never go down. The Epic Games Store tends to have problems quite often. Steam, for the most part, never seems to go down. If anything, it tells you who is hiring the competent employees and paying for the competent servers and data redundancy. There might be actually more outages that happen specifically on like Counter-Strike Go than I'm aware of, but yeah, nothing that makes it to the big news providers. Video Games Chronicle says the Xbox Tomb Raider timed exclusivity deal was reportedly worth $100 million. They signed a Rise of Tomb Raider as a one-year exclusive in 2015, which, okay. I still have, I think I played Rise of Tomb Raider, but I haven't played the last Tomb Raider in the Tomb Raider reboot. And I think that is just an example of one of the games I've haven't purchased and played lately. It would be kind of a good points to finish up that series. There's probably several series I've started and then not finished and intend to still finish. I can think of like the Indiana Jones point and click adventure games. I still have like 2 of those to cover. The Nonary games, I still have that visual novel to cover. Theoretically, I need to purchase Danganronpa 2 and move forward in that way. The Fear series I'm slowly finishing on Halloween months. But yeah, I'll finish that. Telltale games as a long-running series of covering just all the Telltale games. I still have a few of those. Lego games as a long-running series. I have a few of those. It's kind of pointless to even talk about this, but Dead Space had a community live stream set for August 31st. That happened. We already talked about it. Let's see. Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town is coming to PC on September 15th. This is also going to be a Komatsu article. All of these articles are going to be Komatsu articles. Videos not available. Let's see. Now we do this, I guess. Let's see. A Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town and Cross Sakuna of Rice and Ruin collaboration DLC has been announced. Which, yep. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin is another game that came, nobody played, and people forgot about, really. That seems to continuously happen, is that people get hyped up about these games and then they just poof into nothingness as soon as they come out.
My raging flames have got your back.
Let's see.
That twig won't do a thing.
I'm just gonna lose here. Yeah, I would have lost anyways. Even if I had killed this and this could have killed me. Not even taking care of that. Cotton Rock and Roll gameplay trailer is out. Cotton is the like shoot 'em up game, side-scrolling shooter game. There might be an argument for me to try and play some of these Cotton games. They're not my style of games, but they might be a little bit easier than just your average super difficult side-scroll shooter games. Might be a little bit more interesting than seeing a boring spaceship shooting boring spaceships. It feels like there's a score multiplier element that's happening here and more collectibles. There have been several times, particularly in Repentance, where Binding of Isaac has shifted from being a top-down twin-stick shooter game into being a side-scrolling shooter game, which definitely implies that they may very well want to make a side-scrolling shooter game that is just a side-scrolling shooter game. On the other hand, maybe Isaac is doing it right by only limiting you to very brief points in which you do side-scroll shooting because it can't stand up as its own experience. Let's see. Nico Asumi VR is now available in North America. This is a cat collecting game, first launched in 2018. Nico being the Japanese word for cat. No video here. And yeah, it just looks like regular cats. There was a mobile game. It was something called like Thief Cats or Cat Thieves or something, where it went in a very funny, weird way, where you're trying to find more and more cats, and you do a lot of grinding, is what I remember I did between it to unlock all the cats. I liked the aesthetic. I didn't like the grinding in it as far as what that mobile game was that I played, and eventually I kind of just unlocked everything, so, and it wasn't getting updates. So I stopped playing it, which that is pretty much what happens to all mobile games in my experience, is they get kind of abandoned and then there's just no new content, so there's no reason to continue to play it. That's where my favorite mobile game, Destiny Child, really shines, is that it overwhelms you, if anything, with the amount of content it gives you.
Seek what is not there.
And that creates a situation where you can always come back and do dailies and always play more and more. Moving on, a smartphone game, I guess called Heaven Burns Red, has a presentation set for September 11th. I don't recognize this game. We are getting close to September 11th, and it always sounds a little awkward to have anything happening on September 11th. I guess this is a Clannad inspired game, or it's being made by the same company that made Clannad. That might be the case. So this could be a big time game. Yeah, this was announced in 2019 as an RPG. And yeah, I am definitely more willing to give some slack to the likes of Japanese companies, small Japanese companies, for things disappearing and then coming back and being re-announced, because I actually trust Japanese companies ever so slightly more that they actually are working on a game, and that it isn't just stuck in development hell and barely getting worked on. But I think both Western and Eastern companies kind of have a terrible habit of announcing ideas and then never really having anybody work on it. Let's see. Which Dragoncraft character do we want to do that to? Let's see. Komatsu says the action roguelike shoot 'em up IRA for PC is now available in early access. IRA, I guess, would be IRA. It could be ERA too. Let's look at what this video is.
It won't be
Yep.
long now.
This teaser video doesn't really explain. Yep. So it seems like it's a little bit of a bullet hell top-down twin-stick shooter game. Doesn't look terrible. It does look like it's all in Japanese as far as the trailer, though. I imagine this is probably one of the first, like, Hades clones, for lack of a better term. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more of these come out. Now, I guess the question is, if we go over to its Steam page, does it support English? Yeah, it's also a Korean game. Interesting. Well, we can leave that where it is, I suppose, and deal with it when it comes out. Let's see, Coffee Talk Episode 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly have been announced for PC, which, yeah, I'm not sure I've determined I want to play Coffee Talk 1. Like, I think it mostly is just a visual novel type game where you also pour coffee. Which I am not one of those people that has a lot of experience with having deep, thought-provoking conversations over a cup of coffee with random strangers. I don't know if that is something that that most people have.
That's hot. Yeah. Is that a human?
Be gone.
Let's see, I guess we do this.
I'm done.
And that
sticking
clears
what
the
I told
field.
you to leave. That's hot.
Dragon and I are one.
I may have played slightly out of order there, but I don't think I did. Let's see. According to Gamatsu, Chorus Worldwide is going to publish the open world action RPG The Misanthropic Girl for Switch and PC. This is first I've heard of this. So misanthropic is a big word.
What are we strategizing
Is that girl who skips class and does bad things? I would assume that's the case. That being said, if you look at this world, it seems like it has been destroyed, and we are in a post-apocalypse anyways. So, yeah. This looks fairly buggy even in the trailer.
It all ends here.
So, I'd half expect it to improve.
Thanks to them.
Yep, this is a filthy looking school, if they still making kids go to school. And then we've got some creepy monsters that look like they'll just stomp kids to death. And it seems like you can ride bicycles, and is she gonna steal things out of the vending machine, or is she gonna actually purchase things out of the vending machine? Or are you just walking around the vending machine? Honestly, this kind of feels more like a asset flip half attempt at a RPG game than a fully polished product that you'd expect to see for this type of experience. It seems like these legs would be fairly boring also if they are the only enemy you're fighting. Yeah, it seems like maybe kids were the only ones that survived, and they all decided to secure the school and use it as a base more than actually using the school as a school.
Please steal responsibly.
Okay, everyone, lights out.
Yeah, I would expect yeah, I would
Here goes into the blue and beyond.
I would accept I would expect this to look better. Let's see. They're calling her a day school refuser. And this is like the first time she even went to high school. What they mean by day school refuser is, of course, in Japan, there is the day school, which is, I think, probably required by law, like regular school, and then there is night school or cram school, which is not required, but then most parents in Japan require their kids to go into cram school and night school to study even more and get higher scores, unless they just happen to be geniuses and don't need it and are already at top marks of the school or the entire school system of all of Japan. But yeah, day school refuser is basically means she's not going to any school at all, which that's an interesting starting point for a character. Kind of has to go a little bit further. Let's see. Apparently, Chorus Worldwide is also going to publish the turn-based simulation game The 100-Year Kingdom for Switch and PC. So, clearly Chorus Worldwide has gotten some games to publish, and this one has a Steam page. I don't think the other one did. They made an announcement as a Steam page, but it's not out yet. Yeah. I think we will see more Japanese games of medium tier quality showing up on Steam, which is a good thing. So you can play them if you want to, at the very least. But yeah, that game doesn't particularly look amazing. Of course, Worldwide is also going to publish RPG game Ketchup and Mayonnaise, which, yeah, there's no Steam account for that one yet. They were also going to publish visual novel retro game Aliens for PC, which, okay. So clearly they had an event and made several announcements. And this is where you get to a point where it becomes a little bit questionable whether individual publishers should have their own individual events to announce games, or if just individual games should have their own announcements. Because, of course, Worldwide coming out and announcing 4 or 5 things they're going to publish is a far difference from a Nintendo Direct coming out and announcing those same games. Moving on, Gamatsu Toem A Photo Adventure adds a PS5 version and launches September 17th. We're going to have a lot of photography-centered games. And this one looks interesting, although I think it's been played out as far as black and white games. I think I would have preferred maybe some more color. But yeah. This looks like this might be a better thought out concept as far as taking the photographs, and I wouldn't be surprised if, compared to something like Pokemon Snap, the photographs you take here are fairly binary in that there is the right photo that you're supposed to take, and then there's a whole bunch of wrong photos that you're not supposed to take, or that don't give you anything if you do take them.
How did I miss that?
Whereas Pokemon Snap, you can take a picture of the right Pokemon, but you can shake or not have it centered or not have it in a good pose, and then you just have to play the game over and over again. And arguably, maybe that's too much time spent playing Pokemon Snap. Let's see. Storm.
My raging flames! That twig won't do a thing.
Let's see. A third-person rail shooter called Xenocider has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Do we have a trailer of this? No. Third-person rail shooters don't happen that often. So they're kind of harder to compare. Looking at this, it doesn't really feel like it's much of anything. Kind of feels like it's a Star Fox game, but it also kind of looks like worse than even the first Star Fox game. Like, in that, I guess that would be the best comparison as far as a third-person perspective rail slider.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Ooh-wee, this wasteland's a fixer-upper.
Let's see. Could I survive if I evolve this? No. So I should evolve this and just kill it.
I'm ready for more. What do we have here?
We're together forever.
Let's see. Gamatsu says the arcade beat 'em up Fallen City Brawl has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Which, yeah, seems like everybody is in kind of a blue color palette.
I loved her.
And it seems like a decent collection of beat 'em up guys. I don't know if this means 4 or 5. If you include the wolf characters, will be on screen at the same time. Everybody's really muscular. You have 8 packs all around, even on the girl. They all tend to look fairly different, although this guy in the shirt
Now you'll pay.
looks fairly similar to this guy. But yeah, from that one image, that is the beginnings of a beat 'em up game. I don't know how many beat 'em up games you really need, but let's see. If I do this
My dragon and I are
and
one.
then this,
Zing! A crack-a-boom!
that didn't work.
It won't be long
And
now.
keep wasting evolves.
Come on, partner. Yeah.
Let's see. Gamester says the post-Soviet first-person shooter RPG called Parapecia, I guess is how you'd pronounce it. Parapecia? Parapedia? Maybe. Anyways, it's added in that PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch versions. It's due out late 2022.
I loved her. She was everything.
Definitely feels like a lot of these developers are finding it fairly easy to port games to other consoles. Now, looking at this game, it might not be much of anything, or it might have enough polish and enough game to make sense
Don't underestimate me.
to actually be on all of these consoles. If anything, what I think we're running into is a situation where more and more of these storefronts for consoles in particular are getting less and less curated, and I guess that means less censored in a lot of ways, in favor of them now potentially being just full of garbage, which is the flip side of that coin. Certainly is that the less censorious you become, the more full of garbage your storefront is going to be.
Time to say goodbye.
Hunger is sharper, freshness guaranteed.
This,
Grease
this,
lightning.
and
A twig won't
this,
do a thing.
and then I'm gonna lose. The game The Last Friend launches September 30th for Switch and PC, which, yeah, I don't recognize this. Yeah. This might be an example of a game that didn't hype itself out enough, and so now it's something that I don't even recognize. It seems to be pretty much a almost beat 'em up game with maybe some Plants vs. Zombies style tower defense. You're apparently saving your dog. Doesn't look terrible, doesn't look amazing. Let's see. Hatsune Miku Colorful Stage is coming to the West in 2021. This is a rhythm game for smartphones. Hatsune Miku still a big deal, I would imagine. Let's see. Aztec Forgotten Gods has been delayed to Q1 of 2022. It was the demo is coming out October 1st to 7th for PC. And honestly, a game being delayed is a great way to anti-hype me and make me even less interested in this game. I have not seen this, and it really is getting to the point where I've either actually have seen these games and I've just forgotten them all, or there's just so many games that are about to be announced or being announced. I mean, this looks really interesting as maybe an action quick time event style experience, something close to like Azura's Wrath. See, Hot Wheels Unleashed has a DLC plan that's been announced, which, alright, so they're gonna get Street Fighter, BMW, Superman, Aston Martin, Wonder Woman, DC, specifically Superman and Wonder Woman, but then also generically DC, and then I can't read what this is as far as this car logo, but obviously that's maybe Chevrolet. Ninja Turtles, Masters of the Universe, McLaren, Barbie, and Batman, and many more. So DC, and then the trinity of the three main characters from DC, and then Ninja Turtles, Masters of the Universe, and Barbie are all owned by Hasbro. And then each of these car companies, I imagine, are their own car companies, and Street Fighter is Capcom, I believe. See. There's going to be vehicles, track builder modules, customization items. This is exactly what you didn't want to hear, frankly, from Hot Wheels Unleashed. You didn't want to hear it announced that they are going to try and rip off kids. Because that's exactly what they're going to do, obviously. This is going to be full of microtransactions and DLC. Maybe not microtransactions, maybe just DLC. But it's going to be a nightmare, certainly. And yeah, I don't think I'll be recommending that game to anybody at this point. I'm going through some of these tabs I have, because I think I've already talked about some of these games and they came out on Steam, so we'll just close these tabs. And if we haven't talked about them, then I'm just kind of curating. Here we have a game called Rising Hungry Lizard, which looks like nothing really. Like, it looks like an old game trying to look really good. There was a point in the 90s where you would have like games like this where they tried really, really hard to put a lot of motion and a lot of pixels into their images and a lot of color, just like painstakingly hand drawing each image to make it look as good as possible against its background. And I would applaud the game for looking like that, but then immediately take away that applause because this is 2021 and there is no reason for something like that to exist. Here we have Idle Monkey Logie, which I don't even know how you would pronounce that. Free to play, but then really $20 with in-app purchases, English only, and it looks like garbage. Here we have a game called Puzzle Dwarf, which seems to be a little too dark screenshot syndrome. It's like very small puzzles, like Sokoban box puzzles on very small islands. Yeah, I don't think that works.
Is that a human? Be gone. I'm done sticking my head in the clouds.
There we go. Here we have a game called Travelers, The Origin of the Virus, which I assume is some kind of an ancient astronaut survival action game. Find a cure for humanity. So you, as an astronaut, seem to go to some kind of alien-infested Earth. And then eventually, I think you end up in Roman times? I can't help but just assume that this is just an asset flip game. Like, I really like for this to be an interesting story and experience, but I can't help but just assume that they've just asset flipped a whole bunch of garbage. It's early access, $14.99, English only. I'm gonna give it a follow list but it almost certainly doesn't deserve it. And the idea almost makes more sense. No, it definitely makes more sense if it was a TV show, something like 7 Days, where you're going back into different time periods to find a cure for some virus or disease. There was a remake of an old TV show that went on for a season or so, where they would travel to different time frames, and it was basically History Class, the TV show, and
The real battle begins.
that show didn't really go anywhere either.
This conflict must end.
At the end of the day, it seems like you mostly are just first-person shooting things, regardless, and that's where so many of the games boil down to, is that they are just an excuse to be a first-person shooter with asset-flipped content. Here we have a game on Steam called False Dichotomy, which looks like it's some really trippy 90s era druggy type drawings. Guess we don't see that art style anymore at all, where it's just very edgy, very colorful, things that you'd expect to see on like Pogs. But yeah, this actual game doesn't look interesting. $8.99, English, allegedly full audio. Let's see. We do this.
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
Then we do this.
Is that a human?
Then we do this.
These weapons are for hunting dragons.
Then we evolve this.
It won't be long now.
Hunger is sharper than freshness.
Get rid of that.
guaranteed.
I mustn't give in.
Here we have a game called Junk Punk Arena, which is already mixed. Yeah. Doesn't look like anything really interesting.
To be a clear day.
They're calling it a beat 'em up. Don't even think it's that. It's free to play, online player versus player, so it's not something I could cover anyways. Here we have a game called A Curse from Beyond, which looks to be mostly text-based, and it looks like it would be a nightmare to actually try and read. Like, the idea of text turning into your landscape might be interesting, but then you have to kind of scale down the text to such a small amount that you can get some detail there. $4.99 English only. That's not really going to work the way that's depicted. Let's see. According to Gamatsu, Spiritfarer Bravely update is now available. You get new spirits, features, and quality of life changes with narrative tweaks. Spiritfarer was the game where you were basically taking different characters across the river Styx, and you were kind of managing your boat. And yeah, I will say mainstream video game media really liked this game and talked about it quite a bit. General people seem to never really play it. With an update, I suppose that makes an argument. There is a problem, certainly, when I say general people seem to not have played it, in the fact that I just don't know. I don't follow enough YouTubers who are just random people making video game content. That would be a nightmare. So I am kind of locked into, is Giant Bomb playing it? Is it getting recommended on my recommendations? At this point, I don't get any recommendations, and really never have gotten any recommendations on YouTube to see video gamers. I could potentially spend some extra time every week and just look at what people are playing on Twitch, and maybe that would give us a slightly bigger bit of information. I see the sales numbers on the Japanese side, but generally, as far as people's feedback, if it's not getting reviews on Steam, it's basically the equivalent in my mind that nobody is playing it at all. And that's probably an unfair way to play, but that's an unfair way to take it, but that's really what I end up having to do. Let's see, here we have a game on Steam called Chariot Land, which just looks like a tank player versus player game. $2.99, single player, English, Chinese. Actually, I guess it's not player versus player game, it's just player versus AI. Here's that game area, we had already talked about that. Or Iria is an anime actually, and it's spelled I-R-I-A, so it's probably Ira or Ira. Iria is a very old anime, one of the first that I watched. And maybe it's worth watching, maybe it's not. I mean, you're mostly gonna watch it if you have nostalgia for it, and it'll feel incredibly different compared to a modern anime. Next we have a game called Train Life, a railway simulator. We have far too many of these games come out. This looks nice and all, but I think we can pretty much say there's a blanket ban on any kind of railway simulators, subways, trains, anything like that. That you'd basically have to make a completely different style of game to make me interested in playing these kinds of games. And that's probably true for most simulators, is that I just don't want to play them. Here we have the Tau Ceti Terminus. Tau Ceti Terminus? Yes, it just looks like an asset flip game, though. VR, $19.99. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Anchor Up, which, puzzle game, where you, I guess, maybe are moving boats from point A to point B. It might be something to this. $9.99, English only, but it has only 40 puzzles, which is way too few for $10. Yeah, and it may be a little unfair to judge puzzle games that way, but yeah, I don't really know any other way to judge them.
Is that a human?
Get back here.
Let's see. Do we want to play this? No. Here we have a game called Kiwi, which is some kind of somewhat colorful, maybe too much is happening here as far as a puzzle platformer game. Playing as little kiwi birds, and they're working with other animals through platforms. It is rated positively. It's $24.99, which is a little expensive, but yeah.
Oh, why'd it have to be a clear day?
You get the early bird pack for free if you purchase it in the first week. Otherwise, it's another $5. But for me, I would just put this on the follow list. Kiwi is a co-op game, so there is a question, I suppose, if you can actually play it single player, or does your AI help you? This really does kind of feel like one of these games where your experience is going to really suck if you are not playing with a co-op player. And since I just never am going to have a co-op player, I kind of have to take it off the follow list. I will say Kiwi probably works well if you do have somebody to play with you. But if you don't, yeah, you don't. So, yeah, take that into consideration.
Get back here. Be gone. Your scales. Get back here.
Kiss me goodbye.
Let's see. Gamatsu says The Legend of Tianding launches October 27th. It's a side-scrolling action game starring a Taiwanese legendary outlaw. Apparently, a famous Chinese actress has been erased from history for whatever that means by China, which, yeah,
Showed you.
that is the problem of
No one will ever cry.
censorship taken to the most extreme. I wouldn't be surprised if this game gets horribly review bombed just because it is a Taiwanese person and it says the word Taiwan. But yeah, looks like an interesting thing, and it looks like it might be a interesting potential game. Let's see. So I'm going to put it on the fall list just in case I missed it. Might be a little bit educational. Well, obviously I shouldn't take real history from a video game. And it might be still fun to cover. Guess you do this.
Give birth to a new world. I will protect even in death.
Let's see. According to Gamatsu, visual The Longest Night Asamarov, I guess, update is now available. It adds 2 new maps and more. This is an interesting looking character that looks very much like Bloodstained. The whole art style looks very much like Bloodstained. I recall there was a game that basically felt like it was stealing the thematic artistry of the game Bloodstained. Which, I guess if you're going to steal from the best. The actual screenshots when we get to Steam seems to be fairly off from what Bloodstained is in its own thing, and we can see it's very positive. We can see it's already on the wish list. So, yeah. I don't think anything really changes there other than to say a new update has come out for a game. And see, this is probably an example a year later in which I actually do get feedback as far as there actually being an audience of regular gamers who want to play this game and are still playing the game. And at a certain level, there is definitely a question as to how much of the gaming community really are always playing games 6 months behind and outside of that launch window. Obviously, publishers and game developers care about that 6-month launch window, but do gamers care about that? Particularly if it's not an online game where you're playing other people. I certainly never cared about it. Moving on, the turn-based tactical RPG Benares Tactics has been announced for PC. This is kind of a interesting art style. Too big of foreheads, I would say. Like a lot of forehead showing here. Let's see. It's probably a tactics-based game where you put a bunch of characters on the field. Yeah, and that's not the style of game I like to play, so for me this is not one that actually interests me. Grisaya Phantom Trigger 6 for Switch launches September 22nd. This is the 6th installment of the visual novel series. We're still seeing a decent amount of visual novels come to the Switch. Not massive amounts though. I think there is some level of curation that Nintendo is limiting it down to. Whereas it feels like they could have gone wild and encouraged every visual novel creator to put out their games onto the eShop. Here we have a game on Steam called Crash Cleaner, which looks like garbage, for $8.99 English only. Here we have a game called Deep Madness, which looks like nothing of interest, $4.99 English only. Here we have a game called Rolling Adventure, which looks like a physics platformer and doesn't really feel like something I would really want to play, though it kind of feels like it's just a mobile game concept that's been ported to PC. Rolling Adventure is $12.74 and has several languages. It says it has full audio for, which I question. Here we have a game called The Last Dog, which we saw a game where you played as a different kind of dog wandering around as a walking simulator, and now we see another one, which is weird. Almost wonder if this is the exact same developer just making multiple asset flip walking simulator games. As far as dogs, apparently not under the same developer and publisher name, at least. It still runs into the exact same problem though. There's no justification in my mind as far as why I would want to play as a dog without putting out some kind of gameplay mechanic where if you're playing as dog meat in Fallout 4 and you can actually fight rad roaches and like explore and collect items, that's one thing. But if you're just wandering around looking at things, you've just made a walking simulator that's even less relatable than a regular walking simulator where you're in a first-person perspective. Because very few people, while they relate to dogs, very few people relate as dogs, and there's a big difference there. Even furries are not particularly accustomed to the idea of playing as a anatomically correct animal. They tend to be the anthropomorphic depictions of furry animals. Next we have a game on Steam here called Hexagon Knockout, which looks like it's kind of a car-based battle game. It doesn't look like there's enough variety here to be interesting. Free-to-play online PvP. Here we have the Frost First Ones, which they're calling it a 3D platformer and point and click, which is kind of weird. Can't really be both. There's a lot of snow and you run into the danger of just a whiteout in the sense that all of the screen would be covered in white or slight off tones of white. See, this could be a game like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, or it could be just nothing. It is rated positively. It's 254. It's English and Russian, so I think I'd have to give it a chance and put it on the follow list.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
Do we want to evolve this?
It won't be long now.
Hunger is is sharper than any freshness guaranteed.
Probably shouldn't have evolved that. I probably should have evolved this and attacked that. Here we have this game, The Big Con, which this has been talked about and shown off a little bit more than it probably deserved. Is it finally out? Guess it is. It's English full audio, $14.99. We'll put it on the fall list. It's questionable as to why it wasn't on the fall list in the first place. Here we have a game called Monster Harvest, which is already mixed, so we can skip that. $14.44 in a bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Believe. You know, we really don't have a lot of games that center around any kind of religious, like, proselytizing of any religion at all, like on Steam. Which, for a lot of people, it would be very frustrating if there was hundreds, if not thousands, of like Christian proselytizing games, or Islamic or Jewish or Shindu, Hindu, Indian. I know some of these religions probably don't proselytize at all, but you kind of would expect more of that to happen. Now, it might be slightly controversial to say, I think there is almost an assumed fact, or I'm going to put this on the fall list since I don't really know what it is. It looks like it's a puzzle adventure game centering around maybe several different faiths. $4.49 English and German. I think there is almost this assumed fact that compared to video games, religions are boring and unexciting and unenthralling, and so there definitely is a lot of different sects of religions that will straight up ban not just video games, but often just anything of fiction at all. I know I've definitely heard Christians say, if you're not doing something to praise God, then it's just straight up a sin. That in all breaths and all thoughts you should be praising God or learning about God, and it's just like your mind should be 100% focused and obsessed with this single subject. And so I think that is probably where the attack comes from more than anything, is just a general hate of all fiction, a general distrust of any new technology or any new thing that could possibly give other perspectives or other bits of information. But of course that's not going to work for the vast majority of people. So I think if religions do want to proselytize and do what often their religions tell them to do, they probably need to step up their game and make some video games that try to proselytize. And that's a tall order, certainly, when you have like Christianity in particular, to use as an example, the idea of turning the other cheek and passiveness and nonviolence, although let's face it, lots of people don't live by those instructions, even though they are proselytized by Jesus directly, or they are orders directly from Jesus. That is going to make it difficult, certainly, to make a video game. But you could make a Telltale game where you forgive, and you are doing nice things for people and doing good things, or making difficult moral choices. Like you could definitely make a Telltale game that way. You could. They've made collectible card games focused around the idea of around Christianity. It's a niche market, and maybe it won't sell much, but if you're going in making a proselytizing religion game, you're probably not going in with the idea that it is going to make profit. You're going to have to go in with the idea that this is going to try to best represent your morals and values, and that you're going to undoubtedly have a lot of trolls, a lot of edgy teenagers, a lot of haters come up and say something negative. But honestly, a lot of the religious haters have plenty of other games to play. Binding of Isaac Rebirth, kind of a great example of that. Like, if you're an edgy teenager, you'd probably go over and play that game more than you would waste your time trolling some small no-name no-name religious game. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Tricks Magician, which looks like one of these gravity switching games. If anything, I think this art style maybe helps fairly well. I don't understand why you'd use a hourglass to indicate reversing gravity, but I guess that's as good as anything else. Unfortunately, that's really all this game is, though. So 69 cents, English only. I guess the question would be just how many levels are there? If anything, if this is supposed to be a like vertical slice or just a little student project, it looks fine. But yeah, then they're really failing the one thing I needed to see, which is what is the actual number of levels. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Ring of Fire, which looks like a nicely visual, maybe visual novel detective investigation game. Yeah. It still does kind of feel like it leans close to being a visual novel. It's coming soon, English full audio. If it has full audio, that changes a lot. I'm going to put this on the fall list, even though it's not out yet. Here we have a game called Don't Touch This Button. Is this from the previous makers of Don't Press the Button? There was two versions of that. There was a like regular version, then they made like a 3D VR version. But frankly, it was kind of annoying to try and unlock all the endings. And this came out several years ago, so making a sequel is probably not a smart move. Nope, this is not from the same developer. So, is there something here that looks like something I'd want to play? No. Here we have a game called Project Dark Sky, which looks like a dark side-scrolling, maybe platformer. Let's see if we can see it in motion and get a better idea what's going on. Yeah, this seems too generic, too simplistic of a game. And this is probably just an asset flip 3D model. $14.99 early access. Yeah, I think I can skip that safely.
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw.
Let's see.
Time to retreat.
And guess we evolved this.
A fitting end.
You just don't get it.
There we go. Here we have Jake Axe in the trial. Jake Axe : the trial. which apparently is a precision platformer side-scrolling game. Kind of looks like a Game Boy game. I'm noticing this Indie Houses event, which
Waste a good metal.
I don't know if this event really puts very many games on sale, though. Because this feels like a Game Boy game, it kind of feels like it might be a little bit easier, whereas more modern takes on these ideas tends to make the game so incredibly difficult that it's just beyond me to really want to play it. So, I guess since this is, maybe this is a demo, I'm gonna leave this on the follow list, but I'm confused really as far as whether there is a different Jake Axe game. Yeah, this seems like they've put out a second experience. So they're doubling up on the demo basically, for lack of a better descriptor, by stripping out some content and giving you a free vertical slice. And because of that, I'm gonna take that away. Like I don't feel reason to do that. Let's see.
My dragon and I are one.
Freshness guaranteed.
Let's see, the indie houses. So, Acapara Games, not to be confused with Annapurna, Fellow Traveler, Neon Doctrine, Raw Fury, those
Speed things up.
awesome guys, Togi Productions and Whitethorn Games.
Things up.
All I
So
need's
that's
an opening and you're toast.
a lot of names that I don't really recognize.
Sorry, but the time for games
And
is
looking
over.
at these games, I'm not going to really try and click on any of these unless they look really, really interesting. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of things.
What a drag.
Sable still not out. Cardboard Kings, it looks like a card game. Yeah, some of these are out. Maybe they make sense, maybe they don't. I guess now is as good of time as any to have games be promoted from indies. Like, it's only going to get worse as we get closer to the Black Friday point, where they start to just really hype up the release dates and the announcements. You got a whole bunch of demos being highlighted. You've got games on sale being highlighted, which generally I guess the games on sale makes sense. Then they're kind of bundling what looks like several different games from several different indies, which is a little weird. That definitely might be a way to get several games that weren't quite discounted enough by themselves, but still interesting. Of course, some of these games like Kathy Rain came out in 2016, so I already own them. You almost have to assume that this just cannot be a collection. My lovely daughter with the Inquisitor DLC for $5.99. I've wanted to get this game for a long time, and it's just never been cheap enough at $5.99. If I had the money, that would be the point. So basically, I'm just e-begging somebody to friend me on Steam and give me that game.
Miss Toledo, get back.
Yeah.
You're a solid fighter.
In a lot of ways, you do kind of have to... Oh, I could have probably won there, and I wasn't paying attention. You probably do have to work really hard to find a point where you make a special effort to buy these games. When a general Steam sale happens, your first instinct is going to get to AAA games and play the AAA games. This is specifically only the case for people who are video game critics who want to cover more indie games, or people who want to play more indie games. If you literally just want to play the AAA games, then you are fine doing that way. Notice they had to put a scroll bar at this zoom, but they were able to handle that. Yep. And see behind the frame, we can see it's overwhelmingly positive, and I had it on the follow list, so I'll just take it to the wish list. This is, I suppose, also a point in which you could look at games that you've thought about before. If they're being highlighted by Steam at a special Steam event, maybe then they will also have a lot more reviews at that point. Let's see. Gametsu says a Gundam Game 35th anniversary website has been opened. Celebrates 35 years, I guess, specifically of Gundam games. Arguably, there has not been 35 years of good Gundam games. I can't name a single Gundam game that came out to the West that was well received or polished and published. Maybe there are some good Japanese Gundam games out there, and I just haven't heard of them. That's you'd almost assume that's the case. Arguably, you kind of have the same problem with Gundam in general, is that, like, culturally, Japanese people all watch Gundam and like Gundam, but if you were to take all the Gundam animes and really curate it down to the good ones, you could probably get rid of half of the bad ones fairly easily, or get rid of a lot of the excessive dialogue, excessive stories, and do an abridged version. Let's see, the detective adventure game Oshiri Tentai Pupu Mirai no Maitante Tojo has been announced for Switch. Well, that looks like a butt for a face. This is probably not a game that's coming to the West, if I was to guess. Demon Gaze Extras is coming to the West on December 9th, according to Gametsu. It's a dungeon RPG remaster published by Cloud Leopard Entertainment. You can see he has different colored eyes, so that's probably his magical demon gaze. Let's see what this looks like as a game. You play this. So I'm getting a trailer that immediately starts off looking more like a just custom animated thing than actually showing gameplay. The actual game seems to be kind of your standard dungeon crawler with some lewd anime characters seeming to be the focus. The actual dungeon crawling looks fairly generic and boring. Like, this whole gameplay mechanic, I think, just needs to be left on the cutting room floor. I don't think dungeon crawling works, and I don't even know if Japanese people would enjoy the idea of dungeon crawling. If it was a mobile game and if you were just moving automatically, maybe that makes sense at that point. But even then, you might as well just have it randomly summon an enemy, because that's all it really is doing, is just randomly summoning enemies to attack you in most cases.
Is that a human?
Be gone.
I'm done sticking. I told you to leave.
A fitting end.
Yep.
I present you a gift from my life.
Oh, why'd it have to be a clear day?
Let's see. This may have already happened, but the Osobu Indie Showcase 2021 was going to happen September 1st at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I guess that is an event that happened. Yep. So we'll probably have some more bits of news around what they get announced there. The Capcom online program live stream is set for Tokyo Game Show online. A 15-minute live stream planned for September 30th. Konami has announced its Tokyo Game Show 2021 online lineup schedule, eFootball, Yu-Gi-Oh, and more. Let's see, Beat Arena, Pro Power Kun Pocket R, Tokimiki Memorial Girls Side 4th Heart, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters, Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel, Psycho, Battle Royale, Psycho, and then Alba Wildlife, A Space for the Beyond, Astria Ascending, I think that's been announced before, Legend of the Heroes, Kuro no Kisukai, Metallic Child, new title coming from Kuroniko-san team, and then something is coming soon by Playism and by Oizumi Amuzio. So, yeah. They'll have a few announcements.
Zing! A crack-a-boom!
Here we have a game on Steam called Soul Nomad and the World Eaters, which looks like it is
The front.
a tactical RPG game. It looks like it's probably a pretty old one that is just now coming to PC. Feels like this would be a Game Boy Advance game. And yeah, I can't go down into the past for these types of games. They're too grindy, they take up too much time. This one in particular does not look good. 1999. I would assume that there's probably other Soul Nomad games that have come out since. And so you'd be committing to potentially going through a whole series. Here we have a game called Song of Iron, which is already mixed, which is a shame because this looks pretty good. But it also kind of looks fairly generic as a side-scrolling. It's single player, bunch of languages. Yep. This might be a case where they were really trying with the visuals and just really incompetent with actual gameplay mechanics. Let's see what the reviews are. Cons. It has unresponsive controls. It has puzzles that they didn't like. Yeah. So it just seems like they have a very unhappy end result. The German translation apparently is terrible. Combat is extremely frustrating when there are more than two enemies. Here we have a game called Wanderlust, the Bermuda Secret Collector's Edition. Which, yeah. I imagine a lot of people will have Wanderlust once this pandemic is actually completely gone, where people are just going to take all kinds of vacations and go all kinds of different places. But also it could be the exact opposite happens.
You're a solid fighter.
This is a Big Fish game, hidden object game for $13.99, English only. Here we have Beyond Mankind, The Awakening, which is mostly negative. Which, yeah. That sucks. Some of this looks alright, but I think most of this just kind of sucks. And kind of looks like it's a Fallout clone. English, allegedly full audio. Seems to be buggy. Nearly all aspects of the presentation are mediocre to bad. The shooting is bland and lifeless, with underwhelming gun sounds and effects. Little sense to impact. Yeah, speaking of underwhelming sound effects, I've been watching Red Dwarf again, which is a British sci-fi comedy series, for lack of a better descriptor. I'm a little surprised nobody has ever just bought the rights to it and tried to make a more Hollywood version of the show. But on the other hand, Galaxy Quest kind of is that idea, and if you couldn't get a Galaxy Quest TV series going, then there's no reason to make a Red Dwarf series. But like at a certain point, Red Dwarf would air like most BBC shows, and then it wouldn't come back for several years, and then it would air another series of like 6 episodes at most, and then it wouldn't come back for a few years. And it did that many times. Otherwise, it would be, if it was more of a Hollywood TV show, they would have had easily over 100 episodes. But yeah, it was made in collaboration on 2 people. One of the persons around the 7th season decided they didn't want to do it anymore, or at least that's the story that is publicly said, and I guess I have to believe that. I don't know why I'm questioning it. And then the exact season after that point is just awful. At least in the extended uncut versions that they put out on DVD and Blu-ray, because they lost the laugh track, which was a like audience reaction, so it wasn't ever actual laugh track, they say, but honestly I imagine recorded live in front of a studio audience, or recording the audience's reaction, and then dubbing that laugh track on top of the video. I imagine even then you've got some guy with a sound button that he's putting in some laughs here and there. It would be very logical to have somebody press a button that starts a laugh and then kind of fades it down as the audience actually starts to build it up, or you press a button so the audience hears that they're supposed to be laughing. But without that, it gets super weird, because there's no it feels like a completely different show, and it's not just the laugh track that's the problem. The writing and the pacing in the writing was completely off, because now it was being done by different people, and so it just created a really weird 7th season. 8th season got a little bit better. They also weren't playing the music. I think they were perpetually low on budget, which again, Hollywood could fix that, certainly. So they weren't playing the music notes that for like the intro and outro enough that would catch people's attention. And so it gets a little bit better in 8th, but it's still pretty bad in 8th. And then a little bit better in 9th, but it's still pretty bad in 9th. And it's not until you're talking 6 to 10 years later that you get to like the 10th season, that at that point you've gone from the 4:3 TV ratio to 16:9 widescreen ratio. It's not until about the 10th season that it starts to get back on track. So generally I would say watch the first 6 seasons of Red Dwarf, and maybe only once watch anything past the 6 seasons, or skip till about the 11th season. There are weirdnesses on top of it. It is really a weird release history, in that even the 10th season goes in a different direction, and really just tells one 3-part story for the entire 10th season, and that's all it is. And then they've since made a spin-off kind of movie called The Promised Land, which also could have just been labeled as another season. Once they started in the 7th, 8th, and 9th episodes, starting doing multiple part episodes, that was a problem too, because it's going too long. They also seem to reference things that either I've completely forgotten already, having just started at episode 1 of season 1 and made it to season 10 at this point, that there are references they're making that are like references probably back to season 1 or 2 that I don't remember. And that is kind of a problem too with season 10, is that they started to get very self-referential. Ironically, the main character at one point was in jail awaiting trial. So jail, not prison, in the UK. And that slowed down their chances to make content. It's a weird show because it really centers around 4 main characters and sometimes a female character who is really just a MacGuffin character. But then they did bring her in for a season, and that was a mistake. Krachansky is her name. Should have never been actually on screen, and she's actually depicted as by a completely different actress at the beginning of the first season than she is later. Honestly, I think she maybe have been depicted by 2 or 3 different actresses over the series. Hey, we do have somebody on the poll. So somebody did respond on the poll with yes as far as they play Shadowverse. So it is now at 100%. Yeah. I don't think I'll be doing a lot with the polls, but it is an interesting thing that could happen. I doubt I can make 2 polls. Let me see if I can do that. No. Doesn't seem like you can. You probably have to end one poll to have the next poll happen. Yeah. But yeah. The actor was acquitted. It's important to mention that as far as the accusations against him. But that in Hollywood you can get away with quite a lot illegal and still be allowed to make movies and TV things. But yeah. And I imagine, I think there was a BBC show called Space that tried to basically do their own version of Red Dwarf. Not calling it Red Dwarf, and just take the general idea of a bunch of silly characters in doing things in space, and it didn't really work because they didn't have the right actors. And I think that's probably what would happen, is like you've got to really get a good set of actors to be able to play a series for a long time. And particularly in the UK, they don't want to do that. They want to be in and out quick and then move on to working a different TV show or a movie or a play or something else. BBC also just being horribly underfunded. But I would say watch Red Dwarf once all the way through, and then if you a few years later want to rewatch it, probably stop at about episode 6, maybe jump back at episode 11, because some of the latest ones are kind of good. It's kind of surprising that these actors, they're just getting older and older. But I mean, you can't even make that argument anymore. And I don't know why I'm talking about this instead of video games, but you can't even make the argument that the actors are too old anymore when you have digital de-aging, and when you have like Jean-Luc Picard, a series coming out on streaming services. Speaking of streaming services, apparently Netflix just got Seinfeld in the US, which, okay. I would also recommend watching every single episode of Seinfeld once, and then if you want to watch it again in a few years. Watch most of the episodes, but there are a few that you can skip. The Puerto Rican Day Parade will be interesting to see if that is on Netflix or if that is still going to be one of those. The one episode that never gets reprinted or on services.
Let me divine tomorrow's water pressure.
But yeah, that's an episode you can probably skip. There is an argument to make a remake of Seinfeld also, probably with the same actors, but to give it more of a connecting narrative. Curb Your Enthusiasm went more down that direction, and I think it is better that way, where each episode is a standalone comedic episode, but there is an overall arching narrative from season to season, where there really isn't so much of that in Seinfeld. Except for, I guess, the George Costanza getting married narrative. That's the one thing that went multiple episodes. But yeah, also that's probably where that's definitely where I've been spending a lot of time and wasting a lot of time, as I've been watching Red Door. Moving on, back to video games though. Let's see, we have Beyond Mankind: The Awakening, which is mostly negative, so we can immediately dismiss this. It doesn't look terrible as a first-person shooter. It really highlights how you can really asset flip fairly well and make something that looks good. $13.99, English full audio, a whole bunch of languages. It's kind of not really a reason to look. Let's see. We already talked about this game, didn't we? Here we have a game called Bombardment, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter game of no visual polish because it's pixely. $3.39, English only. Where are we on our missions? Desperately trying to get 3 Dragoncraft victories. Since we're losing enough, let's switch over to Bloodcraft. Here we have a game called Suit for Hire, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter of no interest. Early access, $13.49. Yeah. There definitely is a possibility that there is a fan base out there that just loves and eats up every single top-down twin-stick shooter game. That's just not me. And I really can't accommodate that audience. Here we have a game called Reactor Tech Squared, where the idea of a simulation where you're building a nuclear reactor might be interesting. I don't think it's interesting enough on its own. It almost has to be just a fairly detailed mini game inside a bigger real-time strategy game or city simulation game. This is $12.74, English and Russian. And I don't know if there really is a lot of reason to learn how to build a nuclear reactor or think you're learning how to build a nuclear reactor in a game, since it's something very few people are going to do. Here we have a game called Cute Bites, which seems to be some kind of vampire life sim. Interesting. Vampire Raising Simulator. I kind of have to put this on the fall list, because if I ever do play the Princess Maker series of child raising simulators, this would just be a great one to put in the middle there and do something completely different. The art style seems a little rough, particularly when you compare it to this asset purchase in the back full of weapons. The actual game very well may not be much of anything. But yeah. I want to put that on the fall list and give it a chance, just for its weirdness. Here we have a game called The Colorful Creature, which Looks like it's way too colorful. It's just a platformer. Early access 254, a whole bunch of languages. I can say no to that. Here we have a game called Ice Cream Truck, which is apparently coming soon. Seems like it's a simulation game where you're running an ice cream truck. I think we'll wait till this comes out to think about it, so I'll just close it now. We have Pro Strategy Football 2020, which is just a soccer, well, nope, American football strategy game, $19.99, English only. Let's see. Let's see, we have a game on Steam called Vile Set, which looks like it's just an asset flip game. They're calling it a colony sim base builder, and I guess it could be that. Regardless, it doesn't look interesting. $14.39, English only. Here we have Opus Echo Star Song, which I believe is either the second or third Opus game. So I'm gonna put this on the follow list. There is an argument to just putting it on the wish list, but story-rich adventure indie game. Am I wrong? Is this not really a visual novel? I guess it isn't. So I'm gonna have to reevaluate. I guess I put this on the wish list, then I look at the developer and I see if there have been other Opus games. Rocket of Whispers Prologue, Opus Rocket of Whispers, and then Opus The Day We Found Earth. Yeah, it says the third game on there, but each of these games are on the wish list, so at some point I might just get the whole bundle. Interestingly, they aren't actually bundling the games together. I'd think you'd want to do that. Here we have Unholy Alliance Tower Defense, which obviously we can dismiss a tower defense easily. 764 English and Arabic. You don't see a lot of games with that language combination. Here we have a game called Sinter. Some periods, which just looks like an Asteroids clone. $2.99. We haven't been seeing a lot of Asteroids clones lately.
Are you as excited as I am? Who are you? I'm so excited!
Let's see. Gamatsu has the Tokyo Game Show 2021 online official live stream schedule announced. 4 days of events.
How dare you?
Yep.
How
It seems like the events are specifically hiring animators to go in a very different style as far as their own promotions. Maybe trying to promote a new style, maybe just trying to not make their events look like something like they're promoting anything. Like, interestingly here, you see a right stick controller and then face buttons. And then you see, I think, a D-pad and a left stick controller, which that is the Xbox lineup. And same as here and same as here. So the fact that Tokyo Game Show would draw controllers and have the Xbox arrangement instead of 2 analog sticks down at the bottom on PlayStation probably means a lot more than you would think. That is really a slap in the face. And then here you have depictions of Game Boys, which that is kind of interesting instead of Nintendo Switches. I'm not seeing a Nintendo Switch anywhere around here. I'm seeing computers, if anything, and tablets. You can check out Gamatsu if you want to see all these announcements. Frankly, Gamatsu is just going to come back and give us articles about each of these announcements anyway, so it'd be fairly redundant to just try and be early informed about something that won't come out for a very long time anyways. Gamatsu says the Idolmask Starlight season has gone gold. It will be due out on October 14th in Japan. So, yep, new Idol Master. It's coming out for the PS4 and PC, not the PS5. Song of Smoke launches on September the 18th. You craft, forge, hunt, and fight to survive in a mysterious world. This looks interesting to have more realistic looking, like Razorback characters. It's a VR game. I don't know if I want a Razorback type hyena. I guess that's a hyena, not a Razorback pig. It's kind of hard to tell. I don't know if I want to see one of those attacking my face in VR. But yeah, it's a different from seeing something like a Skag in Borderlands, or just your generic your generic spider monster. Let's see, the post-apocalyptic real-time tactical action game Dustwind: The Last Resort is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, and Xbox One on September 15th. Which, yeah. Guess we want to check this out.
For the end is near. How dare you?
Let's see.
How dare you?
Yep. A lot of these feel like things that could just be a Fallout style game. If this isn't turn-based, that may help a lot too, because then it starts to get a lot closer to like a Diablo game. Which I think I would prefer something closer to a Diablo game than a turn-based game from that isometric top-down perspective. Famitsu has the review scores for issue 1709. They gave F1 2021 34 out of 40 and Sonic Colors Ultimate 34 out of 40, which that's easy enough to say. The Xbox Games Pass has added Craftopia, Final Fantasy XIII, Surgeon Simulator 2, and more in early September. What's the more? Sins of Sojourner, Crown Trick on September 7th, Breath Edge on September 9th, Nuclear Throne on the 9th, and The Artful Escape on the 9th. And then Quake 1 and 2 and 3 are all now. State of Decay 2 got a Homecoming update. Let's see, is there anything else worth talking about? Fallout 76 got an update. Leaving soon is Red Dead Online on September 30th. And then Compa, Disgaea 4, Forza Motorsport 7, Hotshot Racing, The Crystal Age, Age of Resistance Tactics. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Tactics. I forgot that game even came out. And Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales are all leaving. Super Monkey Ball has been added as... No, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania has added the DLC character of Hello Kitty, which I'm sure Hello Kitty fans will be interested in that. This is interesting that this is uncategorized, because I've never seen Gematsu articles be uncategorized before. A high energy cyber goth action F 'em up No Longer Human has been announced for consoles and PC. This looks very weird, but I kind of would need to see how this game is supposed to play in reality. Like, visually this looks like you are either just going to mash a whole bunch of buttons and not actually do any actual strategy or skill, or you're just going to have a seizure from all the flashing lights. This seems to be visually unappealing, to say the least. Like, there's a way to make something like that, but you've gotta be real careful on how you pull that off.
Damage heavy.
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
Let the clouds
clouds roll in. Tell me what to do, please.
See, moving on, we have a game called Stellar Raid, which looks like a side-scrolling shooter of no interest.
What was sown has been reaped.
It's free, English only.
Hostile life form detected.
Doesn't look like it's a student project. Yeah, it just looks like a kind of small game. Free is the right price for something like that. Here we have Smasher and the Will of the Thicks, which looks like it's just a joke game making fun of obese people. Early access, $4.99, English only.
Our bonds restored.
Allow me to bestow a crimson blade.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
Okay,
Now
you hit
it's under
this,
my touch.
Heavy impact sustained.
and then there's anything else to do?
All I need's an
Here we have a game called Blake the Visual Novel, which I don't know if I like this art style. It seems a little extreme, but I would call it an art style, definitely.
Sorry, but the time for games is over.
Graphic novel meets visual novel. There isn't really much difference between a graphic novel and a visual novel other than its medium, in most cases. Calling it a thriller, it's $1.99, it's English only. It's already on my follow list, so I'll just leave it on the follow list until we get more information.
Pain and suffering are what I live for.
Let's see. So you hit that,
Got your
then
message.
you evolve
loud and
this.
clear.
Scatter like the blossoms.
Cruel
Then you hit that,
for the weak. Okay.
then yeah, hit that.
Such a good guinea pig.
You don't belong here.
This can attack 2 turns.
All of you.
So if I could get it to do 12 damage before this one attacks, that'd be great, but that's not gonna happen. Here we have a game on Steam called Afterlife Beans. $1.99, looks like garbage. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have something all in Asian characters called I'm Against This Marriage, which looks like some weird low effort Chinese game. Are you marrying a mermaid? English is not supported, Chinese only.
Like the moon on the water surface.
Here we have a game on Steam called Rabbit Hole, which just looks like an RPG Maker game. We haven't seen any RPG Maker games so far today. $4.99, Korean only. I almost want to just stop playing at this point and just focus on finishing the news. Which, yeah. It'd be nice if we could just play for an hour on a collectible card game, or slow it down and spend less time focusing on the collectible card game so I can move faster on the news. I don't know if I really can move faster. Here we're looking at a game called Hang Together, which is just, I guess, an online co-op Hangman for $4.99. That's not going to work for me. I don't think that works for most people who want to play Hangman, and I don't know how many people actually want to play Hangman. Here we have Uncrashed first-person video drone simulator, which it's been a very long time since we've seen a drone simulator. I think the fan around drones has completely disappeared. This is $11.24, several languages, and I'm just going to say no to it. Here we have one in Asian letters called Crazy World, which just looks like a asset flip low effort horror game for $10.79. whole bunch of languages. Here we have Tapeworm Disco Party, which I guess maybe a strategy game. But yeah, I don't think this really is the kind of game I would want to play. Like an attempt to make Snake a little bit more of a strategy experience or a more challenging experience instead of just playing a generic game of Snake. But yeah, $7.99 English only. I don't think there's something there. So we have Jumanji: The Curse Returns from Marmalade Game Studio, and this has some relevance, so there's a reason to put this on the follow list. But I wouldn't be surprised if this actually is pretty terrible, and nobody likes it, or it just plays terribly. I don't recognize any of these characters, and like, I don't think we're gonna have the characters from the first Jumanji movie or the second, or the maybe there was a third Jumanji movie. So seems like they've just kind of created generic characters, and this time the parents are involved. $11.69. It's a little expensive too. Yeah, doesn't seem like the Robin Williams character is going to show up, which I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying very hard not to show Robin Williams. The estate of Robin Williams is trying fairly hard to not use his likeness and a whole bunch of things. Here we have a game on Steam called Wizard Punk, which I'm moving fairly fast here, so I want to be careful not to ignore something just because I'm moving too fast. Have a top-down action RPG. Seems like it's in these really small arenas, and it seems like you're just going to be fighting against small numbers of people. Early access 1019, English allegedly full audio. That's nothing there. I don't see any quality there. Gamatsu says Fading Afternoon adds a Switch version and launches September 2022. This is a beat 'em up game with pixely graphics, so it may not come to the West. It's from the creator of the Friends of Ringo Ishikawa, which that is a game I do recognize the name from as a beat 'em up. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com. We talked about this article, but I think I misinterpreted it. It is from the days of Friday to Sunday, and only between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. For children under the age of 18, 1 hour per day. China has massively, therefore, restricted video game play to 3 hours a week. Not 5 hours a week, not 7 hours a week, as I thought potentially when I wasn't really doing the math. Yeah. I was going the opposite direction, and I thought it was saying between Sunday and Friday, every day they could play, but then they have to take Saturday and Sunday off, or at least Saturday off, which would be slightly more reasonable. Yeah, this is going to really affect a lot of people. It does once again create this situation that I've talked about in the past. I haven't talked about it lately, where there is a very high chance that these kinds of rules and regulations are being implanted, and the concept of gaming addiction in general is being pushed, particularly by China, so that any dissident in China can have their kids taken away to some kind of re-education camp, or any dissident kid can be taken away to a re-education camp or thrown in jail directly because they are quote unquote gaming addict, or in this case they were violating the rules as far as how much gaming they can play. Like any excuse to throw somebody in the law is a problem. And then that's not a thing just in China and totalitarian countries like China. Like there are so many laws so broadly written in the United States too that the average person, I think, breaks about 20 laws every single day. And you really don't have to break any laws whatsoever for a cop to arrest you and take you to jail and hold you for 48 hours for no reason whatsoever. And these kinds of overreaches of power create a imbalance that the court system and the legal system is supposed to protect its citizens from, but almost always fails to really do it. And at some point the injustice will become so unbearable that it will either lead to revolt or it will lead to depression, one or the other. I imagine there's a lot of people in China that A, don't want to live in China, and B, don't want to have kids and raise kids in China because of the totalitarian state. And I imagine you will see a massive increase in kids who are more depressed because now they're limited even more on their one outlet, or one of their outlets at least, as far as stress relief in playing video games. Yeah. Moving on, game developers. GameDeveloper.com has an article. The Indian developer Studio Sira has netted $830,000 to create a mythological card battler game. Which, okay, that sounds interesting. It'll take a long time before we get to that, though. The Independent Game Festival submissions are now open for GDC 2022. Remember that GameDeveloper.com is owned by the same sibling organizations under Informa Tech. So they're promoting their own thing. If you were an indie game developer, you definitely would want to submit your game to IGF and try and win some awards and try and get on the good side of that clique in that community, because clearly you're going to get heavily promoted if you are on the inside and have made the connections. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says Naughty Dog hopes to solve crunch complaints with, quote, working groups. I don't know how a working group changes anything. You'd have to really explain what a working group really means. Like, almost every job has teams or employees that work in teams or work together. What does a, quote, working group, other than just rebranding the idea of teams, mean? Yeah. I'm trying to skim this. And see what the idea of a working group even means. Started coming up with working groups to talk about the areas of the studio where we can improve. So they made a committee, basically. And they're just calling it a working group to find ways to improve crunch, where the one solution that, of course, any developer is not going to do is they need to hire more employees. They need to have longer timelines for their projects, and they need strict enforcement of time off to force everybody. And oddly, that's really what you have to do. You have to force every single person to work only 40 hours if you're going to get to 40 hours a week, because there will always be a percentage of employees who are workaholics and think by working more hours they look more, they get bigger bonuses, and sometimes that's true, or they get better esteem, and that they get promotions, and so you've got to basically try to actively punish people for working past the 40 hours, and just, you've got to try and not burn the candle at both ends. And in the long run, that very well could benefit your company in ways that are unforeseeable or not immediately foreseeable, by keeping employees around for 15, 30 years, 50 years even, instead of having them leave after 4 or 5 years to a different company.
You'll make a good test subject.
There have been some stories, certainly, of companies that were fairly good to work with in the video game world, and those employees tend to never leave.
All to find a brighter future for everyone.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Tetrix 3D, which just looks like a 3D version of Tetris. $6.29, English and Russian. Now, it's not Tetris, it's Tetrix with an X, so don't get confused. Here we have a game called Custodian Beginning of the End, which looks like a platformer, but then when it describes itself as a brutal and difficult platformer, I don't think that's the kind of game I want to play. But I may put it on the follow list anyways because it looks pretty good. $16.99, English and Russian. Like, if it truly is a brutal game, there is a decent chance that it'll get negatively reviewed anyways.
Strike!
How did I miss that?
Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says Nifty Games has raised $38 million to expand the slate of licensed sports games. If you're interested in that, read the article. A fully remote studio called Clockwork Labs has secured $4.3 million to build a community sandbox MMO. Ooh, there is going to be some scandal at some point where a business claims to be fully remote and gets a whole bunch of funding to only realize that there is 2 or 3 employees at most, and they've been given massive amounts of money on the thought or the lie that they have hundreds if not thousands of remote working employees. But I'm not making any accusations about that company. I'm just saying at some point somebody's going to pull that scam. VideoGameDeveloper.com says the Saints Row community developer Mike Watson has passed away. Yeah.
It won't be long now.
At the age of 50, here he is in purple, a Saints Row type character.
I'm all out of juice.
Yep. Some of the complaints about the Saints Row first video, I think in particular, is that all the characters look like hipsters. Yeah, whatever a hipster is now in 2021, they definitely do look like hipsters. To my mind, of what you would call them in like 2010 or the 2000s. I don't know what you are looking for though, specifically if you're looking for a new Saints Row game. It both
Find tomorrow's water.
I just don't think you can make more Saints Row games, really, is the problem. Yeah, I don't know how you make a Saints Row game unless you just throw all caution to the wind and you're just doing Duke Nukem Forever in 2022, which you can do that certainly, but you're gonna have to go all in. There is basically, I think, a thought of what Saints Row has evolved into in Volition's mind that has not been shown to anybody outside of Volition, and that really, I think, plays to the idea of them making a Saints Row reboot and calling it Saints Row, without even changing it to the Saints or the Row or anything like that. Yeah. Apparently, the community developer Mike Watson had cancer. He was praised on Reset Era, which thankfully we haven't had to talk about Reset Era in a while, as a pretty invalid news source as it is. Let's see. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says a new bill could stop Apple from prohibiting third-party App Store payments in South Korea. I think Apple could probably pull out of South Korea fairly easily, considering how most of all the businesses in South Korea are run by Samsung. No, that's an exaggeration, but a lot of businesses are run by Samsung, not just electronics, but like convenience stores and things. So I would imagine the vast majority of South Koreans would be patriotic and have Samsung Apple Samsung Android phones instead. This kind of law would have to be applied to something like the European Union, maybe Australia, definitely the United States, before it would really start to affect Apple's bottom line, and they would potentially change their policy. Do this.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Do this.
Zing! A crack-a-boom! How's that sound?
Ooh-wee, this wasteland's a fixer-upper.
It won't be long now.
Oh, this thing's more vicious than a nine-headed dragon.
Grease lightning, baby! We're together.
Do that.
This is pure craftsmanship.
Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says an analyst says that Microsoft bets on gaming to fuel the growth of the sprawling server and cloud business. Yeah, they basically have to bet on that. Otherwise, their cloud and server businesses are going to increasingly have fewer and fewer clients. Because I don't think a lot of businesses are planning on scaling up in the next few years as far as their cloud services. A lot of businesses just don't have a good idea as to why they would need to scale up and do something giant and big and need faster servers, bigger servers, more storage on their servers.
This one's for my family.
Is fighting in despair
Let's see.
all you
A multi-studio game company called Probably Monsters has netted $2 million to continue expansion. This must be the time of year in which people get a lot of money or have to disclose that they've got a lot of money. Here we have a game on Steam called Mana Wars, which just looks like a top-down space shooter of no interest. $3.99, English, French, Dutch, and Swedish. You usually don't get those languages. Here we have a game called Multia Space Program that looks like garbage. $1.19 English and Finnish. Here we have a game called The Soul Device 2, which looks like MS Paint level graphics. Early access for no reason, free to play, English only. Here we have a game called Burn Me Alive, which looks like it might be a horror game. It may very well be just a asset flip horror game though. 1444 English and Russian. I'll put this on the follow list. Here we have a game called The Babysitter, which looks like it is a RPG Maker game. Free. I guess the price is right there. English only. And now I can see the beginning and the end finally. Here we have Train Travel Simulator, which is worse than a train simulator. Early access $4.49 English and Russian. Here we have WW2 Bunk Simulator. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to play a game where I was stuck in a bunk. You could probably play a level in a game like Wolfenstein where you're stuck in a bunker for a while, but not a whole game. This is 1019 listed twice for some reason. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have Super Wudon GP, which looks terrible. $7.79. Let's see. Game developer has a programming article here. Fast surface recognition system in Unity. How to efficiently and easily detect a surface for audio particles in gameplay. Which, yeah. We should be at the point where you're using either Unity or Unreal or any modern good engine where you should be able to procedurally tell somebody whether they can climb up a hill or not, or whether they're going to slide down at a specific slope, whether they're going to make a crunching sound if they're standing on rocks versus a soft grass breeze sound if they're standing on rocks, standing on grass. That is what you would ideally want to see happen. And it's not as automated as it should be, I imagine even now, but it will eventually become fairly automated to the point where you just create a texture, you create a surface, and you assign sound effects, and is walkable, does the rocks perhaps break down into smaller polygons, something like that. Do you do anything here? No. Here we have a game on Steam, Spelarium 7 Match 3 puzzle, which, yeah, doesn't look like anything of interest. $6.99 English only. Here we have a game called Rogue Spirit, which there might be something here. It looks visually polished enough. Early access. $17.99 single player, whole bunch of languages. $17.99 is fairly expensive though, but yeah, I'll put that on the follow list. Gametsu has Beyond the Steel Sky for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, launching November 30th, which I thought that game had already come out, but I guess maybe it came out for Apple Arcade. Yeah. And nope, it is on PC already. It hasn't been out for any of the consoles. Yeah. So on PC, it's rated very positively. It was a niche game, sequel to Beneath a Steel Sky, point-and-click adventure game, so it's not super surprising that nobody really did anything with it or talked about it that much. Yeah, I definitely would like to play that game. Here we have a game called 2033 Das Urschwaschen der Macht. I don't know German enough to know what that means. I know it's something of something. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a date of like March. The English is not supported, kind of obviously. $17.99 German only. So I can't play that. Here we have a game called Canon, which just looks like too simplistic of a puzzle game. 59 cents, English only. I may have just hit a point where any minimalist game is just going to get ignored. Video Games Chronicles says Xbox has exclusive news planned for this month's Tokyo Game Show. Which, yeah. That's...
My raging flames have got your back.
Yeah, I didn't need to play that card. I should have played this version.
That twig won't do a thing.
Is this guy gonna win somehow? That would be crazy if he did. Yeah, Microsoft's still trying to make some headroad in Japan. Ryan Watt, who is the head of gaming at YouTube, put out a Twitter that a game streamer I've never heard of called Tim the Tap Man, and we can just show it here, is now going to exclusively stream on YouTube. Like, I don't know if that means I'm just horribly unconnected, which is probably the case, but I don't recognize Tim the Tap Man. So, yeah. And if he is a big successful streamer, that's still really not supporting small content creators in any way. Right. I want about 9 things, and I can't do 9 things, so we're gonna just end the turn here. Here we have a game called Tian Hong Bookstore, which looks like a mobile game. It looks pretty bad. $8.99, Chinese only. Here we have a game called The Lightbringer, which looks like a platformer. Looks visually polished enough. This is actually the game they were using for the screenshot for that article. This is coming soon, so I guess we'll wait until it actually comes out. Here we have Farmers Co-op Out of This World, so like a farming game is probably a no. A split screen co-op game is definitely no. $12.99, whole bunch of languages. So we do this, then we evolve.
It won't be long now. I'm done sticking my head in the clouds.
We play this.
I do believe we have a case.
We do this.
Though I set, I will rise again.
You smell suspicious.
Today was a right good day.
Let's see. Gametsu says Imposter Factory launches September 3rd. This is the 3rd entry to the To the Moon series. Not to be confused with the Opus series, I think, but maybe. Yeah. Guess we just look on Steam to confirm that. Yep, this is just called Imposter Factory. Which I don't think I've put any of the To the Moon series on the fall list, even though it's rated overwhelmingly positive. I guess I should put it on the wish list. Like, at a certain point, when you have 40,000 reviews, that should be on the wish list. Like that's mob rule at that point. You just gotta go with it. And then the mirror lied. I guess you put that on the fall list. Let's play.
Is that a human?
Let's hurry up and finish. Here we have a game called Shattered Gardens, which just looks like nothing. Early access, $11.04. Let's see. Gamatsu says Story of Seasons Friends of Mineral Town for PS4 and Xbox One launches October 15th in Europe and October 26th in North America. Here we have a game called Deauville, which is kind of a unique art style. Here you got really slanky polygonal people and seem to be laying about on the beach. Probably rich people. Low Poly Beach. Early access for $11.99. English and French. VR and non-VR mode. But you're working to catch the mysterious art thief. Apparently. This seems like this is not enough of a game, though, so I'm going to say no to that. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says, mixing movie magic and MMO design theory to create the Aliens Firestorm Elite. I'm not hearing any real good news as far as Aliens Firestorm Elite, but I'm not really hearing terrible news either. It's just kind of a grindy, more mobile game than it really should be, I think. Here we have a game called Iron Guard VR, which, yeah, as a tower defense real-time strategy game in VR, it looks kind of good. $9.74, English and Russian. I'm going to put this on the follow list, see if people like it. Video Games Chronicle says a new Nintendo Direct is expected this month. It's claimed to be planned for the next few weeks, matching historical data. Well, that's not really the best way to know if something's going to happen. And there definitely would be a question as far as what would be talked about as far as a new Nintendo Direct. It could be very little, it could be a lot. PlayerUnknown has officially left the PUBG studios, so Brendan Green's company, PlayerUnknown Productions, is planning a massive scale open world game, but Brendan Green, better known as PlayerUnknown, has left the studios to form a new independent studio, which, yeah, for the creator of PUBG, I imagine making your money on PUBG and then moving on to making a different PUBG or some other game that's very similar to PUBG might be a little bit easier than sticking with the same company and making a PUBG 2. GameDeveloper.com also has this article. Talk about that. Here's a game on Steam called Lake, which looks like it's maybe an interesting one. This is the one where you're a female male delivery person, which I don't know if that's a good gameplay mechanic or not. $19.99 English only, definitely deserves a follow. Cyberpunk's developer can't guarantee next generation versions will make it out this year, according to Video Games Chronicles. GameDeveloper.com says Niantic promises more transparency after the post-pandemic driven Pokemon Go player uproar. Twitch streamers, allegedly, I don't know how effective this is going to be, have staged a walkout today in protest of inaction over harassment. I'll let you know on Friday if that means I got a whole bunch of extra viewers today. I doubt that's the case. And certainly nobody's on the chat other than the one person that answered the poll, and I guess thanks for that. This is still around the hate raids problem, though, if there really is a problem on hate raids. So it's not really something that, even if I was a Twitch streamer, that I think I would feel like I was a big enough streamer to stop streaming for a day, or that I would want to do that to support that. movement anyways. And GameDeveloper.com says gambling in your game will now automatically get you a PEGI 18 rating, which, yeah. The definition of gambling, I think, may get twisted quite a bit there. But I guess anything that is synonymous with a real-world gambling game obviously would count. Let's see. Raven Software has once again put out a tweet proudly saying they've banned 50,000 accounts for cheating and cheat providers, and more to come from Warzone. Man, Raven Software really just hates its audience, I think. I don't know how you describe it as anything else other than just completely hating its business, its audience. Did we get anything done? Nope. Yep. Seems like we get too often this happening where you just struggle for 3 hours and don't get any victories. And it's not just because I'm not paying attention. That is definitely some of it, but some of it literally just comes down to not having enough cards to win if you're a free-to-play player. The balance is off. Moving on, we have Hermes Tricks of Thanatos on Steam, which looks like one of these resource management games, which I'm never interested in. $5.59, English, German, and Russian. Let's see. The ESRB put out this article, A Kid's Dream Come True, Video Games as Medicine. They're trying to use video games as a way to treat ADHD. Which, yeah, that might work. The problem I think often happens is, and I think it often comes to an overdiagnosis of kids having ADD and ADHD, is the fact is kids don't want to do schoolwork. They don't want to do what teachers tell them. They don't want to do what their parents tell them, because often what the teachers are telling them to do and what the parents are telling them to do, it's not what they want to do. It's not fun. It's boring. It's repetitive. It sucks, just in general. So a lot of kids really don't have ADD. They just don't want to pay attention to the teachers. They just don't want to pay attention to the schoolwork. And that has been exaggerated far too much. And if anything, I would say, as far as that article goes, because I don't want to get into a big rant about it, if you see kids actually capable of focusing and paying attention to video games, and any parent can generally do this test. If your kids can focus and do the things they want to do, they probably don't have ADD or ADHD. ADD and ADHD, as I understand it, would mean you're distracted even when you want to do something. And that would be a good indicator or counter indicator to a diagnosis. And definitely I would recommend, if a school or a parent, another parent or a teacher, anyone other than a medically qualified psychologist and maybe general practitioner doctor is saying your kid has ADD or ADHD, yes, be concerned and get them diagnosed by a psychologist or a doctor, not a school psychologist who has a vested interest in agreeing with the teacher, but yeah, a real doctor, and try to get real tests done and not just start off with giving kids medicine and drugs, and definitely approach this situation with as much skepticism as is reasonable, because you don't want to misdiagnose your kid and have them on powerful, fairly powerful psychostimulant drugs just to make a teacher's life better, or just because a mistake was made. But I, again, don't want to get into a big rant of that. GameDeveloper.com says Playtika has bought Redecor developer Reworks for $600 million to enter the design entertainment market, which, yeah, maybe we'll have some software that comes out very much like a speed tree for interior decorating. That would be nice. Square Enix has confirmed its Tokyo Game Show with a Final Fantasy XVI reveal possibility, which, alright. They kind of need to start teasing Final Fantasy 16 at this point. They can't really do much more with 15. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says CD Projekt has committed a quarter of its staff to Cyberpunk's first expansion, which I guess at a certain point is questionable whether or not shouldn't be all of its staff should be focused on that. Is the other 3/4 perhaps fixing the bugs in Cyberpunk, or is half or 3/4 of the CD Projekt company working on the next Witcher? Which arguably maybe they should just give up on Cyberpunk and make the next Witcher. Susan Wojcicki put out this article saying free speech and corporate responsibility can coexist online. I disagree. I mean, at the very beginning, like I think you're wrong. I can say it in a nastier way, certainly, but I think she's totally wrong there. You cannot have truly free speech, and you have to get down to what does freedom really mean. But I think in most people's understanding of free speech, in the more learned understanding of free speech being a concept that existed even far before the United States Constitution was even formed, as it being the idea that should have existed since the beginning of humanity. No, you cannot balance that with the idea of taking on extra responsibility that you're not really responsible for, and calling it corporate responsibility, and say that they can coexist. Nobody's complaining about YouTube taking down illegal content. Child pornography, for example, is a great extreme to go to. Nobody's going to really complain about that. Nobody's going to complain about like downright obvious pro-Nazi videos and things like that being taken down. They've been happily allowed, YouTube has been happily allowed to take down those kinds of unpopular content for a very long time. They are just now trying to move the goalpost even further, and that's really, I am assuming, all this article is. And I'm not even willing to really listen to Susan Wojcicki, because she's, frankly, almost everybody at YouTube is two-faced. They say one thing to one people and another thing to another people, and then they do something completely different otherwise. They have no credibility with the viewers of YouTube, nor with the content creators of YouTube. And that's really where they should start over. Is they need to get rid of Susan Wojcicki. They need to start over. They need to say, we've got a new boss in charge, and it's all going to be about establishing YouTube as a trustworthy, credible company that does what it says, that focuses on presenting content to people that they want to see, and that isn't trying to be this middleman curator to push people to watching things that they have no interest in. I was watching a video just yesterday, like an extremely not YouTube friendly type video that's still allowed on YouTube, and it auto-played to a completely different theme and format channel and video from someone I have never watched before. I don't recognize this person at all, and it's just like, this barely has one tiny thread of connective material that would make sense as far as why the algorithm would have moved me and autoplayed me to that video. There's no reason for that to happen other than the fact that the algorithm has been manipulated and changed so that it does not recommend the shadow banned channel that I was watching, which obviously is shadow banned from recommendations and even autoplay. And yeah, I was half asleep at that time, so I probably put several minutes of watch time on a video that I guess I'm going to have to go back into my history and just remove it, but that still doesn't remove the watch time. It just tells the algorithm to not consider that video. It's just ridiculous. Generally, I guess you shouldn't have the autoplay on at all on YouTube, but yeah, I do. Honestly, it doesn't work at this point enough to justify it being on. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Enemies, which looks like nothing. Just $6.99. We'll say no to that. Here we have a game called Alone on Mars, which doesn't look like it's enough of a game for me to be interested in, for $2.39, English only. And then we have The Curse of Feldar Vale, which looks like it's too much of a board game and not visually polished enough, for $4.49, English only. Here we have a game called Reality Mines, which looks like it is probably an old JRPG game getting released for the first time on PC. But yeah, I don't think there's anything here. Also, I don't recognize this developer or this publisher. This name might actually be a well-known developer, but yeah, maybe not. Maybe he's just somebody who made RPG Maker MZ popular fantasy characters. Here we have Epic Fantasy Battle Simulator. I don't think too many people are going to be buying these battle simulator games anymore. That fad has come and gone. If anything, I kind of feel like the pandemic has helped kill off a lot of the fad culture. We haven't seen a lot of games just pop up and disappear very fast. $8.49, English only. It might also just have been that it took that first generation to realize that fad culture was never going to end if they kept buying into it, and that they needed to be better curators of the kind of content that they actually wanted to play and talk about as far as video games. Here we have a game called Need More Troops, which doesn't look like anything of interest. Early access, 59 cents. Here we have a game called In Search of Fawn Vitae, I suppose is how you'd pronounce that. Yeah, it looks pretty bad visually. English and Russian. Here we have Mecha Knight's Nightmare, which looks like a mech game that's very positive. So yeah, if this plays single player, $15.99, English only. I'm going to put this on the fall list. Now, arguably, I should just put it on the wish list. Yeah. I think I just put this on the wish list. It already has 30 reviews. So we'll leave it there. And then we are, for the last time, I think, on Psychonauts 2 on OpenCritic. It has been more than long enough that if people were going to write audience reviews, they would have been allowed to for now 3 days. Nobody has done that. This tells me that OpenCritic, as a news source, really only tells me what the mainstream video game media thinks of the game. And okay, the top critic average is 97% of mainstream video game critics like it. But that's all I can really tell about from that. Because actual gamers clearly aren't doing OpenCritic reviews. They clearly are putting the reviews on Steam, or maybe some other platforms, but I think mostly just Steam. Gematsu has an article. The Tekken 7, Soul Calibur 6, and Pac-Man 99 producer Motohiro Okubo has left Bandai Namco. He has joined an unspecific game company in Shibuya. Do I know the game companies in Shibuya? No, I don't think I would know. Some Fresh Blood in Soul Calibur is probably good. Some Fresh Blood in Tekken is good. Pac-Man 99 was a fine game. More and more, it seems like some of these older people are realizing they're never going to get any higher if they stay with their current companies, and so they should just go to other companies to get promotions, and they're getting away from that Japanese mentality of working at the same job for life. Whereas I don't know if that's better or worse, frankly, because in the United States you work for like a job at best for 15 years and then you move on. The problem, I would say, is not working with one job for 15 years or 3 jobs for 5 years. The problem is the expectation that you will be working a job full time for 30 to 50 years. If you start working at about age 20 seriously at some job, and you're expected to work and not retire until you're 70 plus, that's quite a lot of years spent focusing on working jobs, often which don't reward that loyalty or just that consistent work schedule with a decent retirement or health insurance or anything like that. But I don't want to get off topic. And then Genshin Impact, according to Gamatsu, version 2.1 update is now available. More Genshin Impact updates. I don't know if people are really playing Genshin Impact, but if anything, it kind of feels like Genshin Impact has solidified itself as being important enough to be reported on, in my mind at least. And that has created a scenario where now, even if its audience has mostly completely disappeared, I, as an outsider, think there still is an audience that cares about the announcements. And in all fairness, any audience that does care about Genshin Impact is probably already playing Genshin Impact and following the news. Unity is excited to announce its first 20 speakers for Unity for Humanity Summit 2021, coming soon on October 12th. So check out that tweet, I suppose, if you're interested. It is going to be weird, certainly, to have Unity, the game engine developer, getting distracted, for lack of a better term, by having a charity event. Like, companies really don't need to have charity events. It's ridiculous. They don't need to get political. Like here, game developers have retweeted this. GameDeveloper.com says, game developers are working on a GameDeveloper.com piece about the anti-abortion and voting restriction laws that went into effect last night in Texas. If you got the time, I'd love to talk about how these laws impact you and the people close to you. So, yeah. There are some game developers in Texas. I suppose this is a legitimate article. It is also, though, reeking of political turmoil from both sides of the perspective, and always would be, but yeah. At a certain point, I think it is fair to say, since probably the majority of game developers, even game developers in a more red state like Texas in the United States, I assume that most of them are a little bit more SJW. And so if they are obsessing or concerned or feel unsafe, as they often say, about working in Texas because of voter restriction laws and anti-abortion laws, which from what I hear are pretty extreme in Texas as far as what has just been put into action, then yeah, that really would affect their performance and whether or not they want to run businesses there. It certainly could have been a factor as to why Gearbox has just opened up a new Canadian office. It may very well be that Gearbox is aiming to move all of its employees or eliminate all of its employees in Texas and move out to Canada. I'm going through my Twitter feeds to see if there's any new news. It doesn't seem like a lot has happened in the past 3 hours, but I did also start fairly late today, so that's not super surprising. Let's see. We'll talk about September's PlayStation Play games, which were revealed. Apparently, they confirmed last week's leak. Apparently, the Battlefield 2042 beta's release date has seemingly been leaked by an Italian retailer, according to Video Game Chronicles. But yeah, that's all there is to really talk about. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.